When did a blind date make you run for the hills? I chatted up a girl online for about a week or so, and things went pretty well, so we decided to meet up. I asked her out to dinner and said that if things went alright, we could go grab a drink after. Let's just say her photo didn't match her appearance. Her excuse was that she'd had a crazy ex that was stalking her, so she'd used her sister's photo and name. Her name. She'd lied about her name. Anyway, came to find through our interview that she was an only child. She didn't catch her slip-up, but I sure did. She rambled on and on about crap I really couldn't have cared less about. Then came the food. The waitress may as well have brought it out in a trough, as this woman didn't use her utensils. Did I mention we were at a steak restaurant? That's right, folks. She picked her steak up and ate it with her hands. Let's not even get into the potatoes. It was the worst date of my life. Here was this large, disgusting, uninteresting thing with no table manners devouring her food in front of me. I couldn't eat my meal. I told her I wasn't feeling well and that I was just going to get my food in a box to go and that I'd eat it later if I felt better. Her response, "Would you mind if I ate it?" You wouldn't think this person had eaten in a week, as she proceeded to devour my dinner as well. She ate both steaks, both sets of mashed potatoes, all the bread, everything. The waitress comes over and says, "Goodness, when's your due date?" The girl says that she's due in 2 months. What the frick? First off, I'd been stunned that the waitress had asked, but then I was floored at the girl's response. Unbelievable. Being the gentleman that I am, I picked up the check because, hey, it wasn't going to pay itself and I'd much rather fit the bill for dinner than go to jail. I kindly said it was nice to meet you, got in my car and went to the bar. She followed me. She followed me to the bar. And when I got out of my car, she proceeded to berate me over why I was going out instead of going home. Now she's calling me a liar in the parking lot of the bar I frequent, and my work buddies are starting to roll in. I never heard the end of that. I said, to hell with this crap, got in my car and drove home. As I read this, a thought occurred to me. What if she was completely underwhelmed with you and decided, screw it, I'll eat with my hands tonight, just to see what she could get away with? I'm sure that's not the case, but I couldn't shake the thought. I got set up with the daughter of one of my parents' friends. I wasn't really looking forward to it, but I was on break from college and she apparently went to school not far from me. So it wasn't like a lost cause summer romance type thing. They showed me pictures and said nice things about her. I picked her up from her parents' place. We were both home for the summer. And I was a little surprised by how pretty she was. The pictures had been from back when she was in high school and didn't really do her justice. The date was dinner and a movie. Dinner went really well. We had a lot in common. She was very grounded and down to earth, cared about the environment. If I had a type, she was it. So we're walking to the movie theater, and I slipped my arm around her waist. She pushed me away and got really serious. "I'm really sorry because you seem like a nice guy, but I'm gay. I just went out with you to make my parents happy." Sitting through the Chronicles of Narnia with her was the most awkward 2 hours of my life. Well, it was ironic that you both went to see a movie about going into a wardrobe, also known as a closet. I'd hazard a guess that it was probably an equally awkward date for her, and I hope to God that you didn't out her to anyone, because she seems like a nice lady. Mine's more of a blind date fail. I'd just come back home from college and I was having a night drinking at the local watering hole, when I noticed the place had a new bartender. New attractive bartender. Short hair, nice tattoos that were clearly leading to interesting places, and an Electric Six shirt. Frick, yes. So I start making a bit of conversation, and much to my surprise, we seem to really hit it off. And not just bartender as everyone's best friend until they leave hitting it off, but really cool conversation. She starts hinting at if I'm seeing anyone, and I say no, and she immediately reaches into her pocket and starts writing something down. On the top is the number of the apartment, and these are directions. We're having a party on Wednesday night, and you should come. True enough, a phone number and directions. What would you think? So Wednesday comes and I'm dressed up and ready to impress. I head over to her place, knock on the door, and there she is, looking $1,000,000. She smiles and hugs me, grabs me by the hand, and drags me through the party until she gets to this big dude. "Jonas, this is my roommate Jeff. Jeff, this is Jonas." I do the whole pleasantry thing, but when I turn around, she's gone. I mean like poof, gone. Like Batman. Not knowing anyone else, I just keep on talking to Jeff. Seems like a good guy. Suddenly, he stops me mid-sentence and says, "You're not gay, are you?" "No? You should really tell Liz that." She'd apparently set up the entire party as an excuse to hook me up with her roommate. I'd been on a blind date with a guy and didn't even know. I once went on a date with a girl and this is how the conversation went. She asked, "So, what's your favorite book?" Tough, but when I was little I loved Jurassic Park. "Oh, Jurassic Park?" "The book or the movie? Everyone loves Jurassic Park." Then she follows up with,
I don't believe in dinosaurs.
You don't believe in fossils?
I don't want to get into it, but I think fossils are bullcrap.
I ended that conversation there and held on to the night until later when she told me,
I don't believe in outer space.
And my head fricking exploded. I wasn't feeling great but decided to meet anyway. We met at a Belgian beer bar. She was gorgeous, fun, and totally into me. I felt a gas pain, so I leaned forward slightly to quietly relieve the pressure. I completely and explosively crapped my pants. The odor was immediate. I excused myself to the bathroom, but the damage was done. I walked out of the bathroom, muddy-panted, out of the bar, and boarded the train for home. The date, however, was nothing compared to the horror of the following 3 weeks recovering from E. coli. I was set up by a friend when I was 16. He took me to the movies at the mall and awkwardly tried to make out. Then we sat in the food court and he asked my honest opinion of him, which I mumbled something typical like, "Oh, you seem nice." And without invitation, he then delved into what he thought of me, which was attractive, but that I could be really hot if I lost 5 to 10 pounds. Then he left me for a bit, which was weird, and returned with a lovely gift. A creepy puppet. I've only been on one blind date a few years ago. It was with the investment banker's son of one of my mother's friends. One of her attempts at finding me a respectable boy from a good family. So that night he calls to ask if I could pick him up instead since his car is broken down. I thought, no problem, and asked where he lived. The guy was staying at a buddy's place an hour from my house. Eek. But still, no problem, I thought. So I got dressed in my cutest little black dress and heels to channel the grace of Audrey Hepburn, and gosh darn it, I think I did pretty well. I pick up the guy and he's not all that bad either. A little on the short side, but he has a cute face and seems fit. So we get to the restaurant and order. He gets a few drinks into him and we have a conversation about jobs and stuff, but then it arrived at who we admired. His answer? Patrick Bateman from American Psycho. Just, without the killing and stuff. He said he admired the character and aspired to live that kind of life, without the killing, of course. Ding ding ding, the alarm bells were going off in my head already. So trying to change the subject, I asked about the frat that he was in. We both went to the same university, and mentioned that I knew some of the guys. He then proceeded to tell me that, all of his friends were just vehicles for him to get ahead in life, and that he didn't really like any of them. Oh boy. Then came the check. He had forgotten his wallet. So I paid. Just awesome. By now, I was looking for this night to be done, but no, things had to get more fun. On the way back to the garage, we passed by an alley and he leans in and whispers into my ear, "You're frickin' hot, and I want to frick you behind that pile of garbage." And then he licks my ear. Do not want. I tell him the night's over, gave him some money and said that he could take public transport home. I then called my friends and went out to a bar to drink the experience away. Needless to say, I was jumpy for a few days, expecting an axe to come out from a corner at any moment. So that's our second story about people's parents hooking them up with other people's single kids that they know, which is so far out of whack in my world. And look at what happens in both of these stories. I'm sure there are more positive results to be honest, but this man by himself represents a serious cautionary tale about why not to go on this sort of date. Okay, I really can't resist typing up this story. 3 or 4 months ago, I was talking to a girl on OkCupid. Things were going pretty well and we decided to get together. I was on a budget because I was saving to move out of the country, so I suggested a local Thai place, which had a 25-cent beer with an entree, figuring the food was pretty decent and the cheap beer wouldn't hurt. I offered to pick her up, but she declined, which is completely respectable. The night of the date, I was running about 5 minutes late and feeling a little rushed when I get a call from her. Even though I gave her an exact address in an easy-to-find place in town, she's having trouble getting there. She ends up calling me back 6 or 7 times in the next 45 minutes as she tries to find her way. There was no advice I could give that was helping this girl. By this point, I've already been there for more than 30 minutes and I was about 3/4 of the way through my first beer. Red flags about how incompetent she must be are going up all over the place, but I'm already on the ride, right? The final time she calls me, she says, "Hey, is there a parking lot?" To which I reply, "No, it's all street parking, but there were a lot of open spots when I parked." She then replies, "I don't know how to parallel park." Mind you, this is a city, parallel parking is a way of life. I'm pretty dumbfounded that she doesn't possess this skill already. This is already a nightmare in my mind, and as I sit there pondering how to solve it, she asked if I would mind coming out there to park her car. I agree and start walking out, being a bit embarrassed at having to explain that I'll be right back to the hostess. I walk outside and a few minutes later she pulls up. First of all, this girl was not as advertised. I got MySpace angled hard. I'm not someone who needs the perfect girl, but I'm telling you, this was out of control. I climb into the driver's seat and the first thing I say is how weird it is. I haven't driven anything but a manual in 3 years, and her automatic feels very strange. I slowly accelerate and head down the block about 3/4 of the way down, where I see an open spot. I let off the gas and instinctively go to push in the clutch. Instead, I stomp on the brake hard. This girl had quite a lot of mass and wasn't wearing a seatbelt. Any physics student knows what happened next. Her head flies forward and nails the dashboard. I start apologizing like crazy, and luckily she wasn't hurt. We spent the next hour having a really awkward dinner and then parted ways. No, we didn't call each other. In short, girl asked me to park her car. It's an automatic and I drive a manual. I hit brake instead of clutch, slamming her head into the dashboard. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Oh, my story's also from OkCupid. We'd talked a few times. The photos were small and blurry, but I got the basic idea, at least enough to set up a date since she lived about 10 blocks away. She was 24 at the time and I was 28. We meet at a bar and I can tell you that she had been more than a little deceptive with her pictures. I already kind of knew nothing was going to come of it, but had nothing else to do that night, so I figured I could have some drinks and hit the sack before midnight. Almost as soon as we meet, she suggested that we start taking shots of whiskey. This girl could drink. Over the course of a couple of hours, she'd probably had half a dozen shots and several mixed drinks. During the process, she liked to discuss how much she loved giving down-under kisses and how much she got around with the people she knew. I guess she had self-esteem issues, I don't know. I was plastered, like blind drunk by the time we were ready to leave. I don't remember going to my apartment, but I remember we ended up on my couch with a movie on as I faded in and out of consciousness and she raided my liquor cabinet. What happened next would have landed me in jail if the roles were reversed. First, I woke up to her on my lap. She's sitting facing away from me, grinding crotch against my jeans and stumbling about during the process. She's still in her dress and panties. Then things went black again. I wake up again and, well, things are happening. I might have been drunk, but I remember a good down-under kiss, and this chick was giving a great gagging performance, like only a drunk girl and adult film star can. Then things went black again. I woke up again, and now she has my pants around my knees. She'd removed her undies, and we're doing the deed without protection. I remember being totally freaked out by that, but not as freaked out as when she removed her brassiere and a dusting of dead skin fell out of the cups and onto my black shirt. I literally threw her off me as I stood up and ran to the bathroom with my pants around my ankles, hurling my guts out into the toilet. When I got back from the bathroom, I was slightly sobered up and she was sitting on the couch finishing herself off. She asked if we could finish together, and I said no, but she could finish me if she wanted to. I honestly don't remember if I arrived at the destination or not, because I passed out again. When I woke up the next morning, she was gone, and I never replied to another one of her text or OkCupid messages again. Good gravy. That's 2 thumbs down for OkCupid then. And the narrator says this honestly without any idea of whether that's a service anyone uses anymore. Not sure if it took off outside the US. Then again, the narrator used Plenty of Fish for years because for a while that was the only service that worked on his Windows phone, so I can't even joke about obsolete services. On to the next great disaster. I was set up with a friend of a roommate's girlfriend. Let's call the date Lisa, and let's call the roomie's girlfriend Karen. I knew what she looked like, so I knew there was an attraction, but I'd never even spoken with her. We met outside the restaurant and Lisa was on her cell phone. I figured it must have been important, but as we walked in and waited for the table, she kept talking about stupid crap, clearly on the phone with a BFF about nonsense. She gets off the phone, doesn't apologize, and we get seated. Then about 2 minutes later, her phone rings again and it's the same, "Oh my god, no way," crap conversations. The waitress comes over and we order drinks, while she's still on the phone and I twiddle my thumbs. The drinks come, Lisa's still on the phone, and I'm halfway done with my drink, and have waved the waitress off once already because Lisa is still on the phone. Finally, about 20 minutes in, I quietly stand up, take $20 out of my wallet, and walk out without saying a word. As I'm walking out, I see Lisa's eyes widen to the size of dinner plates, her mouth open wide and her face turning red in embarrassment. All of the surrounding tables had seen what transpired and were whispering to themselves about it as well. By the time I got home, my date Lisa was on the phone with Karen, who was over at our house at the time. It didn't occur to me until now that my date was probably on the phone with Karen the whole evening. Karen was angry. As soon as I walked through the door, she started attacking me with, "You are such a jerk. Why would you just leave her there and not say anything?" I looked her dead in the eyes and calmly replied, "I didn't want to interrupt such an important phone call," and then walked into my room and went to bed. As I was leaving the living room, I noticed the same expression on Karen's face that Lisa had when I left the restaurant. As a side note, fast forward about 6 months and Lisa and I wound up being F-buddies for a while, so I guess everyone won in the end. I met a couple through a mutual friend and we hung out a bit one night, having a decent time. I spent a couple of days afterwards texting back and forth with the wife of the couple thinking, hey, new friend. She eventually starts talking up this friend of hers, Gary, and it's clear she wants to set us up on a date. Okay, I think. I'm newly single again after 5 years of bad relationship. We'll see how this goes. She describes him as a football player build. Not being a sports person, it doesn't occur to me that I should have asked her to clarify. Would he be a quarterback or lineman, for instance? Anyhow, I meet Gary for coffee downtown. Suffice it to say, he's a substantial man. But I think, hey, I'm not perfect either. I'll give him a shot. We have an okay time over coffee, talking about regular, random small talk topics. He walks me back to my place, but the night is still young and he suggests hanging out and watching some Futurama. So I invite him upstairs. As soon as we're sitting down, he starts talking about his ex and all the drama that she brought into his life, and it slowly comes to light that they may not actually be broken up. He's just seeing what else is out there. At this point, I'm more than over the date and I'm ready for him to get out of my apartment. So I go to the restroom and plan on feigning illness upon my return. Turns out he gave me an even better excuse to give him the heave-ho. I return from the bathroom, only to find him on my couch, cranking his equipment furiously. I freak out, ask him what he's doing, and he says, "What does it look like?" and makes a motion for me to come join him. I was kind of at a loss at this point, and I think all I did was say something about how he needs to leave. He removes his hand from inside of his pants. Did I mention he was wearing sweatpants? Ugh. He shrugs and exits. I never heard from him or the woman who introduced us again. I went on a blind date 2 years ago with a guy one of my good friends set me up with. He'd just started university at USC and was majoring in political science. I thought he sounded pretty smart from what my friend told me and agreed. We met at Laguna Beach, had dinner at the Greeters restaurant, which is this cute little place that doesn't have the best decor but has good food with large portions. It wasn't until he started mentioning that he was a die-hard Republican and didn't support gay marriage and terminations and IVF babies. I'm an IVF baby, and it's a sore subject because my mum tried so hard to have a baby with my dad, and it wasn't until she tried IVF that she had me. Stupidly, I asked him, what did he have against IVF babies? He immediately spews on and on that IVF babies are nothing more than objects of status to their parents and that it violates the rights of the child, depriving the child of their true relationship with their parents and can hinder the maturing of their personalities. By this point, I'm done with him and just nodded along to whatever he said. After he paid the check, he drove me home and walked me to the front door. I unlocked it and then turned around to say goodnight when he leaned in with his tongue already out. I didn't know what to do, so I tilted my head so that he had hit my cheek. Icky feeling of tongue licking my face. When I went inside, he looked at me shocked and asked if I was going to invite him in. When I told him no, he got mad and said that I paid for your fricking dinner. By then, I just wanted to drink a bottle of wine by myself, so I took $10 out of my wallet, threw it in his face, and closed the door. Worst blind date ever. Wow. Well, I bet that you were pretty okay with being single for at least a while after that one. Silver linings abound in this video. And regardless of the rest of his garbage personality, my dude, leaning in with the tongue already out is objectively horrifying even if your date was into you up until that point. Ugh. So I was going to school in New Jersey. The school that I was attending had about a 15-to-1 guy-to-girl ratio, so you can imagine how much fun those parties were. Getting pretty desperate for female attention, I turned my sights to a couple of online dating services. After a few weeks, I set my sights on one girl that I'd talked to a few times through the website. We decided to get together after quite a bit of flirting. I should mention that at this point I was aware from the beginning that she had 3 kids. Obviously, I took caution to this, but I figured that since I wasn't long for New Jersey, just to take this as a sign that she was active in the bedroom. I should also mention that the town I was living in New Jersey was a heck hole that didn't house a single attractive or even moderately attractive woman within a 30-mile radius. So I drove about 30 minutes to this bar in her hometown the next Friday to meet her. I run into her almost immediately and assess the situation. She's got a cute face and a nice chest. She has a few extra pounds on her, but not to the point where I'd call her overweight. We have quite a few drinks while chilling, we play shuffleboard, talking to her ex-lesbian lover, that's another story maybe, and we decide to leave the bar a few hours later. She suggests going back to the apartment, which I assume is hers, more to come on that. Before we do though, she grabs a 12-pack of Michelob Ultra, from the bar's cooler and tells me to walk. Like this is a normal thing in this hellhole that is Bloomington, New Jersey. We get to the apartment and start drinking the beer. Conversation dies down pretty quick, so I just throw it out there, being that I'm drunk. You wanna get busy? Not the classiest moment of my life, but it worked, so I'm not embarrassed about that. She takes me by the hand and we go to the bedroom. She takes off her pants, I take off mine, and we start going at it. A few minutes later, we hear the front door open. Immediately, she tells me to stop and pretend that I'm sleeping. I'm all, what the frick? The door to the room open and the lights turn on. All I can hear is, oh, what the frick? I peek over my shoulder and see a girl and a very large guy standing in the doorway looking shocked. The guy is freaking out and the girl is trying to calm him down, telling him it's okay. I'm dead. I know it. This is how my life is going to end. The only thing that saves me is when he takes the girl and throws her to the ground. This makes her more angry than I've ever seen another person get angry, and he immediately starts apologizing to her as they leave the room. I jump out of bed, throw my pants back on, and sprint out the door. I later find out that it was her sister's place and room and that said sister was living with her boyfriend. A boyfriend who could have very well played linebacker for the Dallas Cowboys. Scariest moment of my life and worst blind date experience. Gentlemen, what are some telltale signs that a woman is creepy? If she doesn't ask me many questions or doesn't seem interested in my life but still manages to be clingy. AKA she just wants a boy, doesn't care who. Or just wants self-validation and doesn't care where from. When she puts a phone in your trunk on top of your spare tire to track you via GPS. I don't use my trunk. She knew that. She hooked it up to the 12-volt charger in my trunk and put a tracking app on the additional line she bought. I only discovered it when I had a blowout and had to use it. When I questioned her about it, she said she had trust issues. But good news! Every time I told her I was somewhere, I was at that place. We broke up after that. The story had a happy ending for me. It was a toxic relationship, but my next relationship was with the woman who would become my wife. We'll be celebrating our 8th wedding anniversary in a couple of months. I sometimes wish I'd been able to help my ex. She had quite a few good qualities, but the suspicion, insecurity, and attempts to control me were too much for me to deal with at the time. It sucks when you see what someone could become, but you know they probably never will. Girlfriend was practicing her signature and asked if she could see mine. Innocent enough, right? I rattle off a few beautiful Johnny Hancocks on a napkin and beyond admiring my own handiwork, didn't think of it further. Fast forward a week and she says, check out my new tattoo. And sure enough, it's my signature. First name only, on her right, or wrong, hip. Yikes. Fast forward to her solo European trip, turns out she cheated on me with a guy with the same first name. I bet he was scared. This girl I met on Tinder had me take her out to a restaurant and then switched tables with her friend. They'd been on blind dates and decided to switch. Her friend was not as attractive and I was very uncomfortable. After ordering my food, I went to the bathroom for 10 minutes to contemplate my exit strategy. When I got back, they'd both left. The other guy asked if he could sit with me, so we had dinner and he ate his date's enchiladas. It was actually kind of fun after they left. This turned out way nicer than expected. And? You and that guy fell in love over those enchiladas and have been married for 20 years now? No, we both ate and I fronted the tab because it was $26 and I was in a good mood. I saw him on campus about a year later and kind of smiled in memory. Commiseration meals. There is something so very wholesome about the result of this, even if it was just an hour's companionship instead of a lifelong friendship. My ex would freak out and throw things and scream at me. And that's not the disturbing thing. She would freaking forget about it and hit reset and act like it didn't happen the next day. Over and over. I started filming her episodes to prove to myself that I wasn't going crazy. That's called gaslighting. It's a form of emotional abuse, and I most often see people who are very, very insecure deep down use it. My dad did this to me and my siblings as we were growing up. He would have these big blow-ups at us and shout at us to leave the house, tell us we're worthless, what have you. The next day he'd be offering to make us lunch before we left for our work shift. If we, being vulnerable teenagers with bruised feelings, would turn down the offer, he'd get mad again. Not super aggressive necessarily. I'd leave for work early before letting it get that far, but he'd complain to our mum that we are ungrateful and mean to him because we refused his gracious offer. Happy news, my dad actually started to get real help about 3 months ago. This behavior was ongoing for the last 15 years, but for the last 2 months, I've been getting updates saying he's doing better. When after 2 days she tells you that she loves you, and also proceeds to mention that she loves your green eyes so much that if we ever broke up, she would steal them while you sleep and keep them in a jar in her room. When she constantly tells you how everybody in her life is out to get her, and nothing is her fault. I've been friends with her for about 15 years, and at times it feels like being a victim is her entire identity. At work, all of her bosses hate her for no reason, or because she's a woman, even though it seems to follow her from job to job, and she has many female bosses with whom this problem still exists. Her group of friends are completely different every 1.5 years or so, because she inevitably has a falling out and it's always their fault. In relationships, she behaves as if her boyfriend du jour is the only redeeming light in a world of evil, rotten people, until they break up, at which point he's always portrayed as a bullying monster and a shining example of what pigs all men are, in very public tirades on every social media page she has, constant subtweets 24/7, but more so after a breakup. Now, I don't doubt that she's been hurt in relationships before. She, nor anybody else, doesn't deserve that. But I do have a hard time believing that every single man she's ever dated is a psychopath, every single boss she's ever had has been mistaken and out to get her, and every single best friend is actually a two-faced B-word. At some point, the common factor in all these situations is her. I don't mean to minimize the bad relationships she might have had. They are real issues, and people claiming abuse should be believed and should be taken seriously. After all these years and all these instances of problems, I do have a hard time believing her specifically, though. If the whole world smells like crap, check your shoes. If you meet a butthole in the morning, you met a butthole. If you meet buttholes all day long every day, you're the butthole.
Anyone who just posts stuff about their exes on social media is someone to stay away from. It just screams, I'm an attention seeker and I'm unable to be mature about breakups. Bonus points if none of the problems in the relationship were apparently their fault.
She'll joke about having kids before you're even in a serious relationship. I went on a couple of dates with this one girl who'd mentioned how much she wanted kids. Nothing unusual, pretty common actually. I'm looking forward to being a dad one day. Then she started sending me those weird things where you put two people's pictures together and see what their kids would look like. One time would be quirky, but she sent me a different one every morning for a week. Broke it off when I realized I hadn't even given her a picture of myself.
Oh, that last sentence was like a horror movie, oh my god.
Met this girl in church group in middle school. We got to know each other because of the group, but didn't really become friends or anything. Stopped going when I went to high school and never really talked to her for 3 years. Then she commented on a Facebook status I had and we got to chatting, and I agreed to hang out the next weekend. I asked if we should invite other people in our church group since I hadn't seen any of them in a while, and she said no. I thought this was because she liked me and wanted to hang out with me, so I was flattered. I kept talking to her throughout the day. The next morning I woke up at around 10 a.m. to about 7 or 8 missed calls, 2 voice messages, and countless text messages from her. I was pretty creeped out by then. The nail in the coffin was one of the messages I got was from an old friend from the church group asking me if I talked to that girl. I was confused how my friend knew I'd talked to this girl before. Turns out the girl had started messaging my friends, asking when I wake up in the morning and why I hadn't messaged her back.
That went from, oh yeah, going on a date, to nope, overnight.
I had this. I was excited to go on a first date with a cute girl. Night before the date, everything is good. Come morning, I get a text from her saying she's a little nervous because she just got out of a fairly serious relationship. I replied saying, yeah, that's fair, how recent was it? I'm wondering if this is like last week, a few months ago, just trying to understand her position. She flips a switch and starts swearing at me and acting like I was accusing her of something. Very odd. She got very defensive. I told her not to worry about the date, maybe not the best timing. She says some snide, yeah, fine. And that really was that. Very strange. Plot twist, the relationship was to be ended the next day after you proved stable enough a stepping stone. Hopefully these were all teenage problems rather than personality problems. There's hope that the girl in the first story grew out of it. I once responded to a flatmate ad, but the criteria was single, male, 30-ish year old. Turns out she wasn't looking for a flatmate, she was looking for a husband. I was always clear that she would just be a flatmate to me. The weird things included getting upset when I didn't make her aware of when I was coming home or just coming home late. She slept in a pile of laundry, but the rest of the house was immaculate. I brought a girl home once and she moved from the lounge to her bedroom beside mine so she could hear what was going on. Things got super weird after a lot of daytime texting with nonsense questions and flat meetings. Then outright banning my friends. Then an extreme amount of verbal abuse, and when I moved out, she'd just come up to me and yell stuff like, "You're such a fricking loser." Basically, I'd started seeing another girl and she went over the edge. I always refrained from reacting and just got the frick out. For those of you wondering, no, I never slept with her and the boundaries were always super clear from the start. Specifying age and gender and relationship status is pretty common for a share house, and I've spent 10 years traveling and working in different countries and see that requirement all the time. This happened in Melbourne, Australia, and I'd just moved to there, and I was trying to get out of a backpacker hostel quickly. There weren't many red flags on the ad, or our first meeting, but a lot was hidden from me before I moved in. The laundry pile was always on her bed. I have no idea if it was clean or not, but it was always there every day. Some of you are saying that's not weird, but I haven't seen that before or after. She wasn't ugly, but she wasn't anywhere near hot enough for me to take the risk. When I say she moved from the lounge to the bedroom, I mean she was watching TV in the lounge, we came in and said hello, went to my bedroom moments later, and we could hear her in there reading a book. We never had any conflict up until I gave her notice about moving out and she asked if it was her. It was, but I made up some crap about being new to the area and wanting to be somewhere more social, closer to the nightlife, etc. The girl I'd started seeing was mega hot, way out of my league, and the awkwardness of bringing her to my flat surely ended that relationship prematurely. I could also tell she was in the next room because people who are alive and nearby make normal human noises. Also, sadly, I got instantly friend-zoned by the hot girl, so we were just hanging out. It was easy to hear noise from the next room, not sure why that confused people. I was always super nervous around the hot girl, I don't know why. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Here are some of my red flags. She dyes her hair every color of the rainbow just to see how you'll react. Tells your family to back off because you're hers. Cheats with her male roommate while you run out to the car to grab a red box. Gives you herpes. F you, Rachel. Go eat a bag of members. An inability to apologize for anything ever. Punishing you with the silent treatment for doing something you had no idea would be offensive to them. Having expectations of you, and then they don't try to meet them themselves. I would never stand that in a relationship, but it happened to me with work colleagues. They never understood why I don't mind that they're ghosting me, instead of annoying me or freaking out at me. Some nice peace and quiet for a change. In high school, there was a girl who liked me. She ended up carving my name into her foot. Soulmate.
She probably wanted a friend in you.
No, I think she wanted the friend in her. Asking for your passwords, your phone, email, Facebook, etc. as a sign of trust. Nope, I have nothing to hide. However, when you think you need to have that information, it shows you already don't trust me. And anyone who asks and then says they won't use it is lying. They may not use it that day or even soon, but they will use it at some point, because the same suspicion that led to them asking for it will lead them to use it. Oh, and I'm not talking about something like your Netflix or Amazon Prime password, which can just be convenient. Heck, I have some of my friends' Netflix passwords. We're talking about phone, email, and social media passwords specifically. Secondly, if you want to offer it, more power to you. But someone shouldn't ask for that is my thought, especially not as a way to prove that you aren't cheating. And 3, like most things, marriage changes stuff. I still think it's a bit much to have all of someone's passwords and have access to everything they ever do or people say to them, but I understand it a bit more in that situation. I had a girlfriend who yelled at me for spending $9,000 on my mountain bike instead of her. I race professionally and I took her out to dinner at least 3 times a week and got her gifts all the time. Plus, we got to travel the world thanks to sponsors. But the one purchase for myself was too selfish. The bike was an Aurum HSP2 with box components, in case you're wondering.
This is literally my roommate's girlfriend. He takes her out to dinner 3 times a week, travels 50 miles every week back and forth to visit her at school, buys her jewelry and nice things, etc. Yet the one time he couldn't make it to her school for a visit, she called him to scold him for his selfishness and then broke up with him via text. The saddest part is that he drove all the way to her school that night to talk to her about it, and she fell asleep before he arrived, so he had to sleep in a parking lot in his car overnight. Until she woke up. Somehow they're still together. Makes me mad because he deserves so much better.
You should remind these people of the sunk cost fallacy. Just because you've invested time and money into someone, it doesn't mean you should continue with them. Make your decision based on what you know now. Oh god, I'd never thought to use sunk cost fallacy in the context of a relationship, but now you mention it, it might be the main reason so many terrible relationships go on for as long as they do. Food for thought, people. Tighty-whities stapled to her wall as conquests. I've seen it, it's out there. Extra points for rubbers instead of underwear.
Historic documentation.
talks about all the health ailments she thinks or is convinced she has, and then continues to consume foods which she claims she's extremely allergic or intolerant to that are wreaking havoc on her health. And holy frick, as I was typing this, a text from her came in telling me about some random health ailment. When she goes through your drawers when you're sleeping. Oh, my cat used to do that. I used to always wake up to socks all over my bedroom and have no idea why, until one time I woke up in the middle of the night to see my cat systematically taking socks out of my sock drawer and then discarding them somewhere else. I think you should start seeing a different cat. This one sounds really toxic. Outright refusing to believe that a guy might not be into her advances. I've seen a woman stare in bewilderment at her boyfriend after he had to repeatedly remove her hand from his groin because she couldn't comprehend that he didn't feel like getting felt up in a public area. I've also had a woman, middle-aged, throw a tantrum because I wouldn't buy her a drink when I, 22 at the time, was at a bar, while I was with my parents and some visiting family members. I worked at a resort hotel as a younger man. Older women would legit put their hands wherever they wanted on the staff and think it was hilarious. But if you got upset or didn't gracefully remove your body from their grasp, they would get teed off. Like, how dare you seem ungrateful after I did you the favor of massaging your eggplant while you tried to pour coffee for the table? What the frick is it with people who think they have the right to the bodies of waitstaff? I've seen this way too many times against both genders. It's messed up. I had to leave a party after my grad school graduation because this girl who I couldn't stand wouldn't stop trying to stick her tongue in my mouth. Like, I'd push her away and go to a different part of the bar, and she'd follow me and try to make out with me. After several minutes of me telling her to F off, I just had to leave. 60,000 texts will do it. Not 65,000? What about 69,420 texts? Heh, nice. A girl I befriended in college seemed pretty cool at first, but I quickly learned she had huge attention-seeking problems. I took her to a party where she was all over me. Arm in arm, holding my hand everywhere we went, I wasn't allowed to be alone. When I was talking to another pair at the party, a couple at that, she kicked it up a notch, trying to kiss and be cuddly and whatnot. I was fine with it at the time because, hey, she's nice, she's cute, a little intense, but I could be misreading it. But I certainly was into her. It was kinda nice being the target of someone else's affection like this. After the party, I walked her back to the dorm and she informatively told me not to try anything because she had a boyfriend. Bonus! Same girl a few weeks later told me that if I'd really wanted to sleep with her, I shouldn't have told her I was straight, because she can't help but turn men. A long time ago in the 90s, I was set up on a blind date. The girl knew way too much about me. She knew my brother's names, where I grew up, and other personal stuff you'd have to dig a little to find out about. This was pre-Facebook, and back in the 90s, she would have had to ask people who actually knew me to find out. She was just a friend of a friend of a friend kind of thing, so I noped out of that one pretty quick. Later, I asked the people who'd set me up on the date what the heck, etc., and it turns out the girl had this super long crush on me and was reportedly devastated that I wasn't into her. Luckily, I steered clear of that possible Stephen King novel scenario.
It sounds like she should have really just played it cool and asked you about those things on the date.
Yeah, those are all really reasonable questions to ask about a person when you're going on a blind date with them. Save for the siblings' name thing. She should have brought that up in a more natural context. You know, I have to ask the question, is it any better if this person is concealing their obsession and asking a list of pre-prepared questions they already knew the answers to and saving the crazy obsessive reveal for later? I at least appreciate how upfront they were about it. I dated a girl in university that turned out to be severely mentally ill, and we dated for many years as she turned me into a shadow of myself, devoid of self-esteem, friends, and any sense of self. Heed my words or be doomed. She wouldn't like it if I went anywhere without her, or did anything without letting her know. I don't know if it was jealousy or what, but it really angered her, and if I ever went anywhere without her, I'd spend most of my time chatting with her on my phone and trying to calm her down. She would contact me randomly throughout the day to tell me she felt terrible and I had to go and be with her. It didn't matter what I was doing. Usually I was at class or at university or trying to hang out with my friends. It was expected of me to speak very lovingly and tell her I'd be over right away. Even if I went over right away, she would get mad that I didn't sound very happy about it, then fight about that. Or if I said I couldn't do it, she'd lose it at that too. You can't imagine how badly this affected my academic and social life. Even if we were together, I couldn't do stuff that wasn't about her. Doodling in a sketchbook while watching a movie? She'd flip out. Mess around on my guitar while we're lying around in my room chatting? Fury. She hated all women who dressed freely. Girl in shorts? Whore. Girl in miniskirt? Horrible slag. What was weird was that she was a hippie liberal girl with progressive parents, but when it came to other women being in touch with themselves, it was somehow terrible. Didn't have a lot of female friends in general, and if my housemates ever brought girls over to our house, she'd get really insecure. Would have random episodes due to her bipolar, causing her to scream at me, throw crap at me, drive extremely erratically, and just generally treat me like garbage. I was basically linked to her 24/7, either physically or by phone, and if we ever got into any kind of argument, I couldn't just walk away and try to cool off. That would drive her nuts and she would panic even more and pursue me. I could go on about her and her behavior, but these were at least things that were there from pretty much the start. Other things revealed themselves over time. In the end, she broke up with me, which I couldn't believe. At first I was angry with her, but very quickly that anger turned to me. When I think back to how long I stayed with her and how badly she treated me, I feel such hatred for myself for doing that to myself. I was weak. She was broken, but she made me feel like I mattered sometimes, and that was enough for far too long. A girl wanted to date me, and she told me how she climbed in her ex's second-story window to argue with him. No thanks. When they know more about your errands than what you told her. Extra creepy point if she becomes angry when you deviate from your initial daily plans. Extra creepy points if she starts angrily texting you when you change your plans as your day is unfolding. When she's a colleague from work and she turns up at the gym coincidentally 5 minutes after you've arrived, and she's in a low-cut top and starts laughing and touching your arms and bending over and just generally being weird. Especially when she knows that you have a wife and kids and this 45-minute session is the only peace you get 3 times a week. The second date is to a federal prison to visit her son that's doing life for murder. Later saying the phone she snuck in her hoo-ha made her too sore to do the deed that night. What's the most socially accepted form of self-destruction?
Self-hatred and negative self-talk.
Indeed, sustaining that negative voice in your head all day really breaks down your self-worth and self-esteem. We're all flawed in many little and different ways. Try to be kind to yourself and others, if only for little things. I've been trying to do that for a while now, and it helps, and others will react more positively towards you, as well as helping you get a bit more positive bit by bit. I mean, yeah, but it allows me to go harder in the gym.
I once told my coach at the gym I'm not motivated by hearing, "You can do it." I need some old school drill sergeant motivation screaming how worthless I am because I can't get the weight up.
Sleep deprivation. Not many adults brag about the amount of alcohol they drink. At one point, that just isn't acceptable anymore. But so many can brag about sleeping less than the recommended hours. Like it's an achievement to be able to function on too little sleep. No, you're harming yourself, inducing stress to your body.
I have genuine sympathy for people who aren't doing that by choice, though.
But if I know they're doing it by choice and trying to brag about only getting 2 hours of sleep a night, I'll just start bragging about how much sleep I'm getting.
Slept 9 hours last night and then I had a nap afterwards. I feel great.
Exactly this. I suffered 10 years of severe sleep disorders, and to an extent I still do. Not so quirky anymore when you black out on buses, ache during the walk to work, see pink elephants floating down the lecture room. Forget last year's entire vacation, lose relationships, or fail class, because your unconscious self breaks alarm clocks without you even knowing. You don't realize how critical your sleep is to daily function until you've been deprived of it for the better part of a decade.
Just get an alarm clock. B-word, by the time I get to sleep, an alarm clock isn't waking me. I once woke hours and hours after my alarm went off. It was still going off, 3 feet from my face, like a freaking siren, just deafeningly loud. Sleep disorder doesn't give a frick.
Yeah, I have to get someone to wake me up normally these days if I have to be up early. Suffering from depression and anxiety, with my antidepressants making me extra tired, and I've been a lifelong vivid dreamer, again, made worse by meds. I can regularly wake up with all of my alarms still going a foot from my head. Even weirder, I can wake up, turn off my alarms, fall back to sleep and have absolutely no memory of doing it. A couple of times I've actually sent messages or written notes on a post-it note during the night and fallen back asleep. I've literally hallucinated when waking up multiple times. Waking up in the morning, I regularly dream or hallucinate university emails being sent to me. and read emails and reply to messages that don't exist, or just completely make up conversations with people, because I hallucinated and they said something else. At the same time as all of this, I can suffer from insomnia. I basically fall asleep easily when I shouldn't, but only sleeping tablets are helping me to sleep at night right now. People get so mad at me for being late or sleeping through alarms, and I just can't help it. It's not me being lazy. It's not me not caring. I genuinely can't control when I wake up, and my alarm isn't guaranteed to wake me up every time. I didn't wake up and decide to go back to sleep. I just sleep through everything. I'm just not, and likely never will be, someone who can easily wake up in the mornings. Oh gosh, I'm counting my lucky stars that I'm a big sleepy sheepdog of a person who can and will drop asleep anywhere and everywhere and sleep like a log, provided there isn't any special stress going on in my life. Overworking. It's lionized and not just socially accepted. Somehow, 12 or more hours a day in a cubicle has become a badge of honor. Working insane hours takes priority over family and health, at least until you drop dead. In Japan, older, burnt-out salarymen were sidelined to sit in a nicer office and not expected to do anything much but stare out of the window. In some ways, that seems worse than dropping dead. Give me a nice office, no expectation to complete any task, a computer with internet, and I will mindlessly scroll through Reddit the whole way to retirement. You'd think. I had this situation, and at first it was great, but after a year I'd come to the end of the internet and was losing my mind. I think if you were working from home it would be one thing, but having to trudge to the office every day to do nothing of value got old really quickly. I finally ended up quitting for a job where I actually get to do something. Get injured on the job in the US. As long as it clearly wasn't your fault, they can't fire you. But they will put you in a room to either do nothing at all or paperwork, and because many places have a policy of no cell phone use, you'll wish you were let go or actually died in the accident. Alcohol. Alcohol is the only self-harm that people look at you strangely for not participating in.
And they'll even bully you about it.
Yep, I've never smoked, toked, drank, or did any substances in my life, and it was only ever drinkers that got upset about that at all. Why not? Are you sick? Are you pregnant? What's wrong? On medication? Like, shut the frick up for frick's sake, and let me drink my Diet Coke in peace.
Yeah, I'm on 103 days of quitting alcohol, and the main reason I don't want to tell people is because I'm afraid they'll think something horrible happened. In reality, I'm just getting too old and busy for drinking and hangovers to fit into my life. I've always been so mind-blown at how alcohol is treated in our society, and the bias with alcohol versus other substances. If someone mentions smoking or using other substances, they're usually looked at as lowlives or addicts, and others judge them and act extremely concerned with their health and safety, and say how bad it is to do those things. And yet, those same people are always the ones who are going out to the bar every night, can't de-stress without having a drink, and always need to be drinking to have a good time. And they don't see anything wrong with their behavior. The amount I've learned in my 20s about how much alcohol truly affects your body is insane to me. Why do we normalize blacking out? You're pretty much overdosing on alcohol. Why do we normalize terrible hangovers? I just don't understand it. Why can people drink until they pass out in a bush and laugh about being blackout, and go to work the next day and never be tested for anything? But someone who smokes green herb on occasion is always at risk of failing a substance test and losing their job. It's crazy. Doom scrolling. Huh? Thanks, agreed. And that's enough Reddit for now. Control F4. Huh? I see what you did there. You're still on Reddit, since Alt F4 is to force close. Sneaky, sneaky.
Alcohol, by a long shot, to the point where people who don't drink are considered sanctimonious outliers.
This is true. I don't drink and never have done. I'm 27, and honestly, the worst people for criticizing or becoming defensive were my parents' generation. People my age were pretty generally good about it, especially at uni, which really surprised me. But I'm still considered unusual, and many people my age do alcohol-based activities like clubbing, or bottomless brunches or bars, etc. I do think attitudes are changing, though.
I've been sober for more than 3 years, and my friends still routinely ask me, "You still not drinking?" Despite knowing that I quit because I had a problem. It's bonkers. I don't have a problem with anyone who drinks, so please don't have a problem with me not drinking. Besides, now you've got a sober driver and someone to pay attention to your kids when you get completely crap-faced at the beach.
Wondering if you're ugly.
The worst part is that some of the people who think about it the most are completely normal and not ugly, and some of them are even attractive. Maybe self-esteem issues, sadly. I can see how that's addictive. I just scroll through looking at pictures and reading comments for a good hour or so. At first I thought it was just hot women fishing for compliments, and there are some in there for sure. But reading the comments, there's a lot of people that genuinely believe they're ugly when they really aren't. It's quite sad. Mathletes. It's social suicide.
She doesn't even go here. That's so fetch. Stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen.
People have said great answers like overworking, lack of sleep, and perfectionism, but I'd like to add a more niche one: digital self-harm. Looking up things that horrify and scare you, or making you feel insecure, such as an eating disorder encouragement, or incel pages that tell you deserve pain, is a form of self-harm. I've noticed whenever I'm not doing well, I end up going down research rabbit holes about disease, war, horrible historical events, gore, and all that crap. It's interesting, and I justify it because it's interesting, but honestly, it just makes me feel more horrible. Self-harm isn't just physical. Sometimes if you have anxiety or depression, your mind wants something that makes you feel worse because it's trying to seek out a reason why you feel so bad. It's true, once I was feeling like crap, full on having anxiety attacks, and ended up looking up methods of taking my life online. Not to try those methods, just to horrify myself out of my mental state. 10 out of 10 would not recommend. It's such a strange urge. It made so much sense once I realized it was simply my head trying to find a reason I felt so bad, because it was distressing that the reason was simply mental illness.
A lack of sleep.
Overeating.
Overeating and eating an unhealthy diet. It's like the #1 public health problem in America, and yet I see so many stories about over-exercising here instead. There are at least 5 stories further on that are some form of exercising. How is obesity or overeating not higher on the list? Well, maybe the fact that it's not recognized here means that it fits the title.
Working night shift. Underrated answer. I worked the night shift for 2 years. I barely saw my wife or my friends or my family. It was hard to function. Things like going to the dentist or the bank became a huge hassle. The crazy swing of getting back on your day schedule for your days off so you can see people, then back to overnights, puts so much stress on your body.
I'm a night owl and I function best after midnight. I can relate with your problems for sure.
This is the comment I was looking for. Although nights are a lot better to work as they're quiet and you get a lot of money. They are horrible for your mental and physical health though. You barely sleep, barely see your friends and family. You have to constantly cancel things as you're physically not able to go as you're drained away.
I'm on year 20 of nights, and no way I could get away with half the crap I do on day shift.
Yep, even on my freelancer schedule, I push myself so hard to get all of my work done on a regular 9 to 5 schedule, because I remember what I turned into as a guy who stayed up all night working, and I don't want to go there again, thank you. Not leaving a marriage due to social stigmas surrounding divorce or the otherwise religious implications holding you there. Stop delaying happiness due to what other people's expectations of a good person are. You're not exercising duty by staying in a toxic relationship, you're self-harming. On that tack, there's also getting married. People need to know that it's okay to be alone and not lonely.
I wish more people understood this. I haven't been in a relationship in 7 years and it's by choice. I still do fun things and spend time with friends, but having a relationship just to have someone is not a priority. Meanwhile, my coworkers and people at church keep hinting that the right one will come along soon. Ugh.
You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Extreme exercise.
Almost every ultra runner I know is an addict that traded drinking or substances for running.
As someone who traded drinking for lifting and then had to learn to moderate that, I've never been less surprised by anything. I'm a food addict, which is part of why I took up ultra running. I guess that's a little better than drinking or substances. I feel bad for any alcoholic taking up this sport, as beer is very much a part of the culture. I dislike beer, so this makes it weird for me. There are even beer mile runs, where you drink as much beer as you can, usually at several stops along the mile. Aid stations will often have Fireball or other shots late at night. Many races are expected to serve beer at the finish line. You can't really get away from it.
I was about to give you crap for saying this, but then I quickly realized you're 100% correct. Training hard and working hard for health and fitness is okay, but there are countless people destroying themselves through exercise, ego lifting, a crappy diet, and performance-enhancing substances. A lot of extreme athletes are actually too fit, with heart rates so low that they're at risk of a heart failure.
Yeah, past a certain point, exercise isn't healthy in the conventional sense. High-level athletes, bodybuilders, and others are really pushing their bodies past their natural limits. Mind you, the huge majority of non-professionals never reach this point, so if anyone's reading these comments thinking, so it's healthier to not exercise? No, that's absolutely not the takeaway. Just do everything in moderation. Spending time on Reddit.
But that's not even socially accepted.
Without using the third-party apps. Plastic surgery. I don't know why we can't admit as a society that social media causes body image issues. That body trends change due to what's seen as popular in that moment. But plastic surgery doesn't fix your self-esteem. Like 90% of the time, cosmetic work gets done due to what you're seeing praised in the media. But when people do it, everyone just responds as long as you're happy. Like, bro, what? That person's body isn't the issue, it's the media. They didn't actually fix anything. That's why so many people who get surgery get it on a repeat basis, because they're never truly satisfied. Sugar. I need to start cutting it out, as I know that that's why I'm slightly larger and unhealthier than I want to be. But it's so gosh darn addictive, and I hate sweeteners. It's obviously supposed to be addictive, and it works so well. It's not just you that's addicted, it's the bacteria in your gut. A diet rich in sugars selects for populations of bacteria that crave sugar, and you experience their cravings. Good news is, you can starve them by reducing sugar consumption and replace them with bacteria that prefer other foods. Overeating or drinking. Alcohol, the only substance that you have to explain why you're not taking it. Going through something and going around like nothing happens to you because you're a man. This is real. I was raised by one of those manly men and thought it was how it was supposed to be. Therapy and allowing myself to feel saved my marriage. Hooch or suntanning, perhaps? The tanning thing is so weird. I visited my family a couple of weeks ago and they were laughing at me because I put sunscreen on my legs before I went for a hike. They were literally saying, "But we're not going to the beach." Then my mum told me I looked good because I'd caught the sun over the weekend at a wedding I went to. When I said, "Yeah, that's not good, I only had a hat but no sunblock," she told me I should be trying to get a tan. She's well aware I've had multiple precancerous lesions removed from my face, and we're genetically at a very high risk of melanoma. That's not tanning, that's just getting vitamin D, which is indeed very healthy. If you do it in a tanning salon or studio, it is tanning. Nail biting. Yeah, but especially when you bite to the point of pain or bleeding. I used to do this. I finally broke the habit by keeping my nails trimmed very short and filed. I catch myself every once in a while biting a nail, so I get the clippers out and cut off what's irritating me. Oh yeah, I know an entire family that has had to buy an economy-size box of nail files because if they don't have their nails sanded down to the pink, they'll absently start biting away unconsciously the moment they begin thinking of anything. Crazy. I also think it's over-exercising. As a child, I frequently hurt myself due to depression and other issues. It's been years now and I don't cut myself anymore, but whenever I feel upset, I will exercise to the point that my muscles will cramp and my body will bruise. When I do this, nobody tells me that I should get help, but instead they compliment me and say how much better I've gotten. It's true I've gotten better, but self-harm differs in so many ways, and this is just one of those ways. If your large muscles are genuinely bruised through exercise, you definitely need help. That can lead to life-changing health problems or even death. Is it really like that, or do you just do extreme workouts randomly and just get super sore because you don't work out regularly? I mean, if I don't do heavy squats for a month and then knock out multiple sets at heavy weights, I can barely sit down for the next 2 days. Watching adult flicks. It depends on who you are though. Some people can enjoy it without getting addicted, but it can ruin other people's lives.
It's probably way worse of a problem than most people think, at least as easily available and pervasive as it is.
I remember stumbling across one of those hot games sites back in the early 10s. Embarrassing to say the least, but looking back, it's a miracle I didn't get hacked and had info stolen. Then there's the links to the weird stuff. Stuff that could really put the differences between atheists and Christians aside. People forget that stuff can get really dark and harmful, especially to the dumb hormonal kids who don't know any better. I have the aching suspicion it'll be our generation's cigarettes. I think a lot of people aren't really informed about what addiction actually means. It's not harmful to you if it doesn't bother you in your life in any way. Everything else is just Christian purity bullcrap. I think a lot of people assume that it isn't harmful if it doesn't have an obvious negative impact on your life, because adult flicks have never been this accessible until maybe 15 years ago. The full effects are not well studied or understood. The main harm that I've read is how it can condition you to expect a very intense degree of arousal, but without any of the other factors that come with doing the deed, mainly things like touch or vulnerability. Again, it isn't incredibly well studied, and the stuff I did read didn't find that degree of conditioning to be widespread. Social media. Surprised this isn't higher up. It's like self-harm for the mind. It has terrible physical effects as well.
Like hunchback.
My brother in Christ, you're saying this on a social media app. Don't throw stones. Smoking cigarettes. This is the obvious answer, I think. Certainly it would have been in my youth. One of the best things that has happened in the US in my life is the decline in smoking, especially public smoking. Smoke used to be everywhere. Ugh. Getting fat. The source? Me. I didn't have the balls to take my own life quickly, so I aimed to kill myself slowly with cake, chips, and ice cream. Joke's on me though. A few years of hedonism was good for perspective after a stress-induced breakdown. Health took quite a massive hit, but at least I'm still here to recognize that, and the rebuild over recent years has been quite pleasant.
It sounds like you found a way to survive during a difficult time, and you should feel proud of how far you've come, instead of feeling shame for what you went through.
Oh, shame is my whole bit, unfortunately. Toxic self-talk has been a constant wrestle, but a strong routine helps against these things. It's now 4:30 a.m. and I'm about to make my way to the gym. Your progress is awesome. It's really hard to stay away from really unhealthy things. It gets pushed in your face everywhere, and it's designed to make us like it. The same with booze. It's everywhere, although it's super dangerous if consumed too much, just because some very powerful people make a lot of money on this stuff. Good on you for getting better, even with the obstacles.
I used to get my dopamine from ice cream, and now I'm diabetic. Yay!
I banned myself from Ben & Jerry's. It's too gosh darn sweet. Overworking and self-deprecation. Starvation. Eating disorders. Being thin is literally a beauty standard, and it's incredibly unhealthy. Having a dangerously low BMI is just as unhealthy as being morbidly obese. Eating disorders are literally the deadliest mental health diagnoses, in part due to all the comorbidities, and yet people idolize and glorify thinness to an unreasonable degree.
Gym bros and their insane diets that are genuinely just eating disorders. No one actually wants to eat 2,000 calories of plain chicken and rice.
I like chicken and rice. I really enjoy my steady diet based on the same main dishes every day. For me, it was diced chicken breast with salt and some Italian-style dry seasoning, plain rice with a splash of olive oil, and a side of whatever frozen vegetables were cheap at the moment. I'd have oatmeal for breakfast, then 2 big chickens during the day and some eggs in the evening. Day after day after day, the same things. It was great, so efficient and so easy to prepare. I don't bother counting and gym broing anymore, but still chicken rice is something I eat a lot.
That sounds a lot better than just plain chicken and rice. Yeah, efficient and quick meals are very nice.
Chicken and spicy rice, like Nando's style, is my favorite meal, but I cannot imagine a giant plate full of plain and likely unseasoned chicken with just plain rice. I had that when I had bad flu as a kid, and I would never want to eat it outside of that.
Unrestrained consumption of processed food, obsession with reality shows, and an overusage of technology.
Dieting. Not all diets, of course, but 1,000-calorie ones, or diets that completely cut off big food groups, or insane stuff like juice diets, are a straight way into eating disorders. Speaking from experience. Self-sabotage. Not sure if it counts, though. Almost all of the answers are about self-destructive behaviors, not self-harming. Deliberate injury to oneself, typically as manifestation of a mental condition, is self-harm. Things like sugar, etc. aren't self-harm.
Using so-called social media.
Voting Tory. What's the most bizarre medical issue you've seen someone trying to hide or mask?
Do you have any medical conditions? No. What medications are you on? Proceeds to name at least 10 medications. Oh, that's so true.
Do you have any medical conditions, sir?
Nope.
Are you on any medications?
Metoprolol.
So, you have high blood pressure?
No, the metoprolol keeps it down.
Actual conversation I had with the guy a week ago. Any past medical history? Oh, high blood pressure, but that's it. No other history. Nope, that's it. Proceeds to take his shirt off. Sir, what is that huge scar on your chest? Oh, that's from my triple bypass. That's medical history, sir. Anything else you want to add in now? Oh, does CHF and diabetes count? I have those as well.
Elderly people are the worst at this. They'll tell you they have no significant medical history, then when you look at their notes, you find out they've had 3 strokes, 2 heart attacks, and a touch of bowel cancer.
That's why I always go with, have you ever had to go to the hospital or something to that effect? No question is truly foolproof, but that one at least is general enough that you might get more info than you need, rather than less. My favorite. Do you smoke? Oh heavens no! Have you ever smoked? Yes, but I've quit.
How long ago?
This morning.
Once took an initial history from a patient who reluctantly admitted he'd had 2 heart attacks in the last 5 years. I started to ask him a bunch of follow-up questions and he got extremely huffy and defensive. It's not a big deal. If I'd known you were going to act like this, I never would have told you.
This happened to me 3 days ago. A guy came in a wheelchair. Do you have any medical issues?
No.
Why are you in a wheelchair then?
Oh, I have a degenerative neuromuscular condition and type 2 diabetes.
In a weird way, I can kind of understand this if he'd been in the wheelchair for a while. I'm missing most of my left lung, and there were times when I answered no without thinking, because to me it's just me and not a medical anomaly. Each time my mum was like,
"What the frick, you're missing a lung."
I can see some poor med student doing a chest x-ray on you and trying to figure out why he can't find your lung while trying to play it cool.
So, you've never felt like something's missing?
This is hilarious. I'm going to have to ask some of my medical practitioner friends about their most egregious examples. Quitting smoking that morning and not considering yourself a smoker is either a great show of resolution or complete delusion. Not a doctor, but when I was working as a med tech in the ER, we had a 75-year-old male patient come in with an extraordinarily low blood pressure, think 70/40, and a ton of facial and upper body bruising. He was brought in via emergency medical services after the nurses at his nursing home found him on the floor in his room, where notably there was some blood on the wall. The guy wouldn't talk to us regarding why he was there, but was very talkative in terms of pretty much anything else. Sports, the news, etc. We eventually were able to get him talking after 4 hours, and he confessed that he'd wanted to take his own life and had taken the remaining amount of his prescribed nitroglycerin. Used for chest pain, it lowers your blood pressure rather quickly. Nitro is also the active ingredient in dynamite, but the amount in the pills is minuscule compared to what's in dynamite. And he had tried to blow himself up by running into the wall repeatedly. He was a really nice guy that sent a card to us after everything. He was just extremely lonely. Things to do today. Stop by bank and get quarters for laundry. Call brother and wish him happy birthday. Research nursing homes to volunteer at. I admitted a guy for pneumonia, which was odd because he was young and strapping, no other medical issues, and x-ray didn't look quite right. The pieces just didn't add up, so I started questioning him more closely. Do you use any substances? The patient said, Substances? That's disgusting. I'm no fricking junkie. I've never touched substances in my life. I moved on to other questions and suddenly, Look, doc, I just want you to know that I might have used white snow once or twice, years and years ago. I just snorted it though. That wouldn't cause this, right? How long ago? Like 10 years, maybe longer. It shouldn't be affecting you after this long. Well, more like 5. Years? Like 5 months ago. This goes on forever until he admits that he just got off a massive binge the day before, where he spent the past 3 days in a hotel with some loose women, smoking crystal non-stop. He finishes with, But I don't want you to think I'm one of those dirty junkies. No, I think you're the idiot who lied and was getting treated for pneumonia instead of getting the proper treatment for crystal lung, which is what he had. Here's a tip, I genuinely don't care. I'm not your mother, your spouse, or your priest. Don't waste my time and endanger your health spewing bullcrap. Whatever horrible, twisted thing you think is too shameful to talk about, I promise you, I've seen worse. Not so much bizarre as clever. I tested a patient who should have been positive for opiates, as I prescribed them. We do that too. The urine looked completely normal, but the test came back bizarre. He had an insanely high specific gravity, which means there's a lot of stuff dissolved in his pee. Sample was positive for opiates, but had 0 confirmatory metabolites, what your body turns the medication into. Otherwise, the test was totally normal. It took me a couple of minutes to figure out how this was possible. The patient was selling their pills instead of taking them and didn't want to get caught. They crushed up the pill and put it into the urine. This made the test positive for opiates, but because it had never gone through the body, the testing machine had found no metabolites. I use the case to find the smart med student in the group now.
As a former pain management patient, that idiot is why we can't have nice things.
My aunt is a family doctor, so patients come to her with symptoms and she directs them towards a specialist based on her diagnosis. One day, an elderly husband and wife came into the office, and when asked why they'd come in, the wife responded, "His foot has been smelling for a while, and I finally convinced him to come and have it looked at." My aunt, not hard of smelling, concurred that his foot stunk. She asked him to remove his shoe and sock. When he removed his sock, the bone from his big toe fell out of his toe and onto the ground. Turned out he had a very bad case of gangrene that had eaten away the flesh of his toe. He knew something was wrong but was stubborn and didn't get it checked sooner. And my big toe hurts now after typing this.
Had this happen to me too. A woman came in that was an IV substance user, and all her veins had collapsed, so she used her leg veins and got a massive infection in her leg. It was black when she came in. She had put up with the pain for 6 months. The leg was amputated, but she was kicked out after she was found up shooting up in the bathroom. Terribly sad.
My mother, the medical professional of our family, had a 13-year-old girl who was 9 months pregnant, in the midst of labor, dilated to 10 centimeters, and crowning in the emergency triage, swearing until she was black and blue that she was a virgin and that nobody knew what they were talking about. Her mother stood on the sidelines causing a commotion, demanding a real doctor make an appearance. Let's just say when the twins made an appearance 10 minutes later, they were all singing a different tune. I don't understand why people keep denying the undeniable. If your doc tells you that you're about to give birth, insisting on never having done the deed and being a virgin is quite pointless. Not sure of this particular girl's situation, but it's very possible that she actually believed that to be true at the time. It's called pregnancy denial, and it's considered a mental illness, I guess. It's pretty rare though, so I'm inclined to think that adolescents just don't always have proper foresight and she was just trying to stay out of trouble, and so she stuck to her story. She could also live somewhere that doesn't provide proper education on the subject, as that's a risk factor in young teen pregnancy. Alternately, she could have also been under the influence of a substance or persuaded to get drunk and then was taken advantage of. So it's possible that she didn't know, just extremely unlikely. I met a teenage girl with a full-term pregnancy ready to give birth, but her boyfriend insisted that the baby was premature because they only did the deed 6 months ago. After the baby was born, he just said that the baby grew really fast. Sure. Might be better if he never finds out, to be honest. Also, this group of stories feels like it's going to be yet another jaw-dropping example of how nowhere near enough people trust advice from their medical practitioners. A 60-year-old female came in after falling asleep and rolling on a pincushion. She had 3 2-inch needles in her left shoulder on the X-ray. We later found out she had been trying self-acupuncture. My cousin told me about a patient who complained about her teat falling off all the time. She said she'd tried to glue it back on or use skincare creams to have it stick to her chest. Turns out she had, not sure what stage anymore, probably pretty bad, invasive lobular carcinoma. From what I remember, the tumor got so big that the skin was stretched quite a bit. Somehow, that plus friction led to an open, not healing and oozing wound which extended to the outlet valve of her chest. Well, nobody there understood how she didn't go to a doctor or a hospital earlier. Keep in mind this happened in Germany. She had a job, health insurance and everything.
My cousin's teat fell off. She didn't have cancer, it was just a botched bosom job.
A friend's teat fell off after a reduction of her chest. She was out shopping the day after the stitches were removed and it literally fell off in her bra. She jumped in her car and sped to the doctor's office. A cop pulled her over. He didn't buy her story at first, then she showed him. He gave her an escort to the hospital. Internal medicine ward outside of New York City. 55-year-old lady was mute in the ED. Noted poor historian, but severely constipated, severe abdominal pain, needed rectal disempation, and more than just an acute workup, so gets admitted reluctantly to surgery. Next morning on rounds, she's talking a mile a minute, full-on detail about her diet and symptoms and family. Afternoon, back to mute and back to abdominal pain and constipation. 2 more days, same pattern. The team is stumped. She is blown away that we can't figure out what's wrong with her, and we feel the same way. Labs, imaging, consult teams, all coming up empty. Strict ins and outs, strict dietary restrictions, everything we can think of. The janitor comes in by chance and he's teed off that he has to change the paper towels so many gosh darn times in this one room. Seems like the whole floor is stealing them from her. Sure enough, patient has been consuming about 2,500 paper towels every 24 hours. The psych team comes in for the obligatory consultation, and of course she's mute. How do we get her to talk? One paper towel at a time. I think some poor intern got a paper out of that case. Hope she's doing well somewhere.
I'm surprised surgery didn't figure out where the paper towels were going before the janitor.
You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Nurse here. One time I had a patient come in with insane intestinal trauma. Had to have his colon stitched up. Said he was fishing and fell. His rectum just happened to fall perfectly on a fishing pole. Must have been a wild night to be fishing in the buff.
1,000,000 to 1 shot, doc. 1,000,000 to 1. Yes. Yep. Undressed and fell on it injuries are an under-recognized problem. There should be a public health campaign about them.
Too many people have gotten out of the shower, slipped and fell onto a box of cucumbers they kept in their bathroom. Not a nurse, but my mum works with nurses who have crazy stories. Here's 2 of them, both from ER nurses. A man came into the ER with a birthday candle in his wang. He'd stuck it in there to surprise his girlfriend on her birthday, but when he lit it, the melted candle wax stuck to him. And this is probably the weirdest one I've ever heard. An old woman came into the ER with a high fever, abdominal pain, dizziness, and a few other symptoms. She's showing signs of toxic shock syndrome, like when you leave a tampon in too long, so the doctor decides to check the woman to make sure nothing got stuck up there. Sure enough, she looks up there and half craps her pants when she sees 2 beady little eyes staring back at her. The doctor begins to pull it out, to which the old woman responds, "Put it back." Turns out the old woman, well past menopause, had gone to a bad witch doctor to get her help to get pregnant. The doctor's recommendation? Put a now dead turtle up there for a few days and she'd regain the ability to get pregnant.
I don't think anything can outdo the turtle story, and I think I'm done reading these stories.
Agreed. The story writer did good here. That turtle one will hurt me forever. I almost spewed at the turtle story. What in the name of Cthulhu? Agreed. Let's chalk another story onto the made the narrator contemplate his existence board.
From a nurse friend. A guy came in with burns to his entire Johnson. He tried to say he got it by trying to shoplift a hot barbecue chicken from a deli down his pants. What he was really doing was doing the deed with the chicken.
Not sure if this counts as hiding, but a patient we recently had tried to play off a rampant staph infection as just some leg swelling. Turns out that what he meant by that was that he'd had a horrible infection in and around his manly bits. Something known as Fournier's gangrene. Do yourself a favor and don't Google that. The swelling had gotten so bad that his eggplant had literally inverted. He later told us that he had to pee with a 5-gallon bucket held up to his crotch because he no longer had any idea where the pee was going to go. Since you're wondering, he went to emergency surgery within hours, which is likely to be the first of many surgeries. The only way to get rid of an infection like that is debridement in the OR plus a crap ton of antibiotics. Somehow this guy had no systemic signs of infection like fever or low blood pressure, etc., so thankfully he should pull through. Last I heard he was likely to lose one of his testes, but I don't believe they were going to have to remove his whole Johnson. I know it's fun to talk about how gross this stuff is, but it's a very serious type of infection. This guy's life was definitely in danger and thank goodness he didn't wait longer.
I mean, I think I would have gone to the hospital long before I found out my eggplant could invert.
I think mine just did invert reading this story.
I've been sitting here for 5 minutes trying to find the ways to properly convey my horror. Oh my god, I don't even have a way. I'm just sitting here thinking, okay, they don't mean inverted, right? It's probably not what I'm imagining. Except, I'm pretty sure it is what I'm imagining. I'm not sure I want you to confirm.
You know what it looks like when a turtle retracts its head all the way into its neck skin? It was like that, but with pus. It's an image that will haunt me till my dying day. This only happened a couple of days ago, and I feel the need to share this heavy, disgusting burden. I'm a pharmacist, and a patient came up and asked me if there was gluten in white snow, because she has a gluten sensitivity. I suppose maybe someone, somewhere tried to cut white snow with flour. Still ridiculous, but I imagine she was quite serious. I actually have celiacs, and when I was in Amsterdam, I couldn't find gluten-free edibles. When I interned in the OB-GYN department, we had a lady sent to the ER due to bleeding in her hoo-ha. When she was examined, she had a massive tumor there, the size of a football, growing between her legs. Her husband was with her. Both said that it had just appeared, and they had never noticed it before. There was absolutely no doubt that the thing had been growing for months. Sometimes, when in shock, people can be in denial of the most absurd things. I work in the lab and the pathology department gets the foreign body items removed from a patient's body after surgery. Recent one was a chorizo sausage. Glad I wasn't there that day. A patient came in with chest pain, said they'd fallen and hit their chest on a table. X-ray was performed to evaluate for a rib fracture or a collapsed lung. The X-ray instead showed a long metallic foreign body in the left part of the chest within the heart. When questioned further, the patient admitted to lying and that they'd actually shot themselves in the chest with a nail gun. The wound wasn't bleeding, nor really noticeable. They were taken to the operating room and did quite well after open heart surgery. Not a doctor, but an EMT. I had a guy who tried to tell us he fell while playing softball and hurt his ribs and arm. This was 10 o'clock at night. Came to find out he tried to screw his substance dealer out of some money, and the guy chased him down with a bat and beat him with it. So I guess he was kind of playing softball. Now that is breathtaking. Disguising your vicious beating as a trip and fell scenario is a bold move. Repeatedly falling onto the same bat all over your body is an incredible feat of clumsiness. Nurse here, and I'm late to the game. I've seen some serious crap, but in this story, the patient tried to hide something and I paid for it as well. Was working at a teaching hospital here in New Orleans as an agency nurse. Some of my fellow agency nurses can confirm when the staff nurses find out an agency nurse is coming in, we get the patients that the other nurses don't want to deal with. In essence, the crappiest patients on the floor, literally and figuratively. I got my reports and was walking rounds with the nurses going off shift. We walked by a patient's room and he wasn't there. Outgoing nurse says he's always going down to smoke, and that he's very demanding. He was a homeless patient there for an infected arm from IV substance abuse. I asked the nurse why he was being allowed to leave the floor regularly with an IV in his arm, and she just shrugged. About an hour later, my patient finally reappeared and shuffled into his room. I make a mental note to go into that room next for my assessment after I'm finished giving another patient their meds. I go to walk in and the door is cracked. I hear snoring, so I'm knocking, and as I open the door I say, "Hello, Mr. Addicted to Smack. I'm Sherry and I'll be your nurse today." He doesn't flinch. I know he's not dead because I could hear him breathing. I place my arm on his arm and gently shake him, and the guy comes out of it screaming like a wild bear, waving his arms, cursing, and flings a bag of white powder he's holding right at my face. I hit the code blue button because I'm legit terrified. The guy is freaking the frick out, and I look like Frosty the Blowman with a yet unidentified white powder in my hair, on my face, and shoulders of my scrubs. The code team runs in with a crash cart, sees me, sees freaking out patient, and grinds to a halt. Someone runs out and calls security, and a big fella of a respiratory therapist pins the guy down. Security runs in and handcuffs him to the bed. The nursing floor manager starts grilling him about the powder, and I hear him start insisting that it's baby powder, and I scared him while he was cleaning up, and he threw it on me. That's really the last coherent thought I had. I came to in the ER and got the story from the doc after all the security footage was reviewed. The guy was going downstairs, meeting his supplier and bringing the goods back upstairs, cutting his supply more with hospital-supplied baby powder that he'd been requesting for chafing, going back downstairs and having his customers meet him in the ER parking area. He had passed out after shooting up into his IV in the parking lot, and I came in and scared the crap out of him. He had thrown a baggie of smack and baby powder in my face. My husband had to come and get me, and I was given a note in case the agency tested me in the near future. I also had to give a statement to the police. It was simultaneously the best and worst day at work I'd ever had, and subsequently the last hospital shift I've ever worked. In conclusion, worked as a floor nurse, patient threw a bag of smack and baby powder in my face, I got messed up. Patient was arrested. A case of teenage pregnancy where Madam Mama was present. Patient was presented with amenorrhea and fatigue initially. Patient became visibly annoyed when the first test suggested is a pregnancy test. The patient and her mother insisted that she had never done the deed with anyone. Angrily, if I might add, even when the test results came back as positive.
No, you quack. I'm telling you she never done the deed.
Nurse here. I had a patient come in for a hip fracture. While helping her to the bathroom for the first time, the CNA noticed something hanging out of her hoo-ha. Turns out she walks around with a prolapsed uterus and thinks nothing of it. My late father was a surgeon and, when he was a resident, had a middle-aged male patient come in complaining of pain in the rectum. They examined him and found a toy lodged fairly deep. When they asked him how it happened, he looked extremely surprised that it was there and then explained, "I was lying in bed and it was on and vibrating on the bed near me, and it sort of moved on its own. I guess it found its way up my butt all by itself." Loved hearing emergency room stories from my dad, and it sucks that he's not around to tell them these days. There should be a sign up in the ER that says, "The sooner you fess up to cramming whatever it is up there, the sooner we can get it out. You won't shock us. No, really, try us." 911 operators. What's the strangest, serious emergency you've heard? I answered the phone and gave my usual, 911, do you need police, fire, or ambulance? And the person on the other end just started screaming, "Bees! Bees!" I assumed that the bees were neither mugging him nor on fire, so I put it through to ambulance because what the frick even?
And now there's coffee all over my desk and my supervisor is looking at me weirdly. Thank you.
911, what's your emergency?
There's a pig in the road. A big one.
Sir, where are you?
At the stoplight. It's the biggest gosh darn pig I've ever seen. Get someone in here now.
This is in a one-stoplight town and the bar is near the intersection. How big is the pig?
About the size of a Volkswagen.
How much have you had to drink?
I'm not frickin' drunk. It's a giant pig the size of a small car. What is wrong with you people?
The officers showed up to find a full-grown hippo that had escaped from the local wild animal park. It was a big, frickin' pig, I guess. FYI, this was at 2:30 a.m. when the bars closed. I get a lot of calls from elderly people hallucinating because of UTIs. One woman had been following CPR instructions, and when the crew arrived, she was doing very gentle chest compressions on her slightly confused but very much alive cat. Wait, UTIs can make you hallucinate? Mostly in older people, weakened immune systems and all that makes it worse. The emergency itself wasn't particularly strange, bleeding in the hoo-ha during pregnancy, but I did get to listen in on the following exchange. So she's bleeding now?
Yep.
Where's she bleeding from?
Her bottom part.
Which bottom part, sir? I need you to be specific.
Her rectum. Front part.
Her what? Sir, is she bleeding from the rectum or from the front?
Gosh darn it, she's bleeding from her hoo-ha hole.
I think it's impossible to read that last line without a heavy southern accent.
I once had a radiologist refer to my groin as my private area. Like, dude, you're a medical professional and I'm 30. I can handle you saying the correct medical term for my junk.
And ironically, to post that story on YouTube, I had to not use the correct term while writing the script. Oh, the strange ironies of online storytelling. We had a lady who would call all the time about people in her yard or on her house, usually doing nasty things, and it was always a false alarm. The lady had been calling since way before I got my job, and even now, after I've switched agencies, she's probably still calling. She's mental, but not a danger to herself or others yet, so no real need to commit her involuntarily. Well, one day we get a call from her about a man at her house causing the troubles to her. My supervisor, who had answered the call, finally got fed up and asked to speak to the man. To everyone's surprise, the woman handed the phone over to the man, and there was someone there. It was her brother, and he was trying to get her committed. We ended up, I believe, asking him to leave the property because he couldn't have her committed against her will at the time. It just goes to show you that crazy doesn't always mean wrong. A family member who was working at an emergency room said the following case came about a month ago. A guy got high on angel dust and suddenly thought to himself, I'm a bit hungry and I'd like to have some eggs. Proceeds to cut out one of his testes and fry it in a frying pan. His girlfriend walks in while he's doing that and goes, "What the hell?" At which point he's like, "Oh, whoops, sorry," and tries to put his fried nut back inside the purse. Then he was in the hospital. I don't know the result, but I can guess.
This made my balls shrivel up into my body, and I'm a female. Jesus.
I've got one for you. Not 911, but it'll tie together. So I worked for an alarm monitoring company. I got an inbound call in the middle of the night from somewhere in Philadelphia. The guy on the line sounds really out of it. Drunk, maybe? My first thought that it was someone calling in to cancel a false alarm. Messed up voice was them waking from sleep, not uncommon. Some alarms start going off in my head. The guy wasn't making a whole lot of sense, and it's really hard to get basic information out of him. Eventually, I pieced together that he's a gas station worker and he's been shot. For some reason, he dialed the alarm company instead of 911. We weren't even his alarm company. There was probably an old sticker in the shop somewhere, so I've got no info on this guy. Mind you, we don't have any magical reverse phone lookup system, and our systems are locked down, such that we can't access a web browser. Genius, I know. Pulled out my phone, also not allowed, and managed to look up a gas station with the inbound number in Philly. Called 911 and got police and medical out there. No idea how it ultimately shook out. Stayed on the line, keeping the guy conscious and talking until they got there, and then I disconnected. Oh my god. Thank God you were able to help. Did they switch alarm companies?
I mean, in all fairness, that company earned their business after that.
My sister is an emergency medical technician in a small rural town. Apparently there's been more than one call about horses collapsing and hurting their rider or handler with broken arms, legs, trapped under horses, etc. When she was new to it, someone just described it as a collapsed horse, and she thought they were supposed to treat the horse's condition. Emergency medical service responds to a call where a man reported having multiple potatoes stuck up his butt. Not red potatoes, we're talking about these big brown suckers. The kicker was,
I was washing my potatoes in the shower when I slipped and fell, and all of the potatoes went up there.
What? I wouldn't even try to say I fell on it. I know nobody would believe me, and I'd look like a bigger idiot. I'd just own it, and the dispatchers would probably make a little less fun of me behind my back.
See, in a way you're right, but at this point with all these stories I've read, I'd feel obligated to say I fell on whatever it is that's stuck up there. Like, it's just the thing you're supposed to do. I'm not some uncivilized savage. I live in a society with rules and stuff.
My mum was a dispatcher for 20 plus years. The eeriest call she ever told me about was one that started off with no voice, only breathing. She kept asking yes or no questions, working out a system to guess what was going on. Eventually he could talk a little bit and said the person who hurt him was still there. So the officers went in with guns drawn. He'd said the person was there but hadn't specified that they were dead. Turns out the guy couldn't talk because his throat was sliced, which he had done to himself, to make it look like his wife, whom he had just shot, had attacked him first. Did he survive to be put in jail? He did survive. She didn't follow the case too much, but enough to know they figured out how it actually happened. I imagine he got convicted.
Your sentence, "she didn't follow the case too much," is a sign of a true veteran dispatcher. People are always shocked when they ask, "So what happened?" after they got arrested or went to hospital, and I say, I don't really know. I've been dispatching for 17 years, and I rarely follow up on my calls. When the call is over, I'm done with it.
I've been dispatching for 4 years, and I'm adopting a similar policy. Every time I followed up on a call, it's been bad news. CPR instructions to a 14-year-old girl who found her mum in the bathroom. She survived to the hospital but was brain dead. Oof. And I imagine that you only see so many frankly absurd stories in your job before they all start blurring together eventually, like in this job that the narrator does. I got dispatched for neck pain. I got there and found out the couple were doing the deed on a couch when the female heard a large pop in her head, followed by a splitting headache and nausea. We transport and after a CT scan find out that she somehow developed a tear in her arachnoid meningeal tissue. Serious stuff, but humorous and odd. Wow, he almost literally fricked her brains out. Not sure if that makes him a legend or a monster.
A similar thing happened to me. We were in some weird position and I wanted him to pull up on my head. I hear this loud crack and then debilitating pain. We both worked at the same hospital and it was quite embarrassing to have to explain that my boyfriend may have broken my neck while doing some weird stuff. Turns out it wasn't broken, but there was some trauma. I was told by his boss to keep it strictly vanilla for a little while. No rough stuff.
I once dispatched a helicopter for a woman who got gored by a reindeer. Apparently there is a reindeer farm for tourists nearby and she tried to kiss one. My pilot and flight crew laughed at the MOI and asked 3 times for them to repeat themselves. I responded to a man in his whitey-tighties standing on the yellow lines in the middle of the road. Arrived on the scene to find this to be true. The reason he was in the middle of the road was to practice his karate moves on cars. Dispatch was having a hard time keeping from laughing.
This reminds me of the guy I went to college with. He had Asperger's, so his social awareness was not the best, and he would often practice karate moves just outside the elevator door. He was fully clothed, though.
A bloke I knew did the same thing as well, but only when he was high. He would throw kicks and punches while in hallways, on the train platform, and came at you throwing punches to test you. The very first emergency call I took by myself during training. The trainer was hooked into my phone and could jump in whenever. I answered the phone while my trainer was trying to grab a cup of coffee from the machine, long cords, and as soon as the phone connected there was what sounded like an explosion and people screaming all over the place. Scared the crap out of my trainer, who sprinted back to the desk thinking that I'd just picked up some huge disaster or accident. He took over the call and started asking questions. And it turns out that what we'd heard was just rushing water from a hot water heater that had ruptured and was spewing water all over these two girls' apartment, and they were freaking out, not knowing what to do about it. Water tip: make sure you know where the water shutoff is and make sure it works. You don't want to find out it's broken when water starts shooting out of your water heater.
We heard a strange noise at my old house. A hot water pipe cracked and leaked for 5 days before I found the source of the noise. 30,000 gallons of water in the bill that month. Luckily, it was the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, so my bill went from 30 to 200 for 1 month. But I'm sure that's the reason the town put notices to conserve water for the rest of the summer. Bonus story: had a similar call a few years later, picked up to a bunch of people being loud, sounding panicked, and talking about someone being locked in a car. I thought it was a child locked in a car, a very high priority phone call for my agency, due to being in Florida and a few recent deaths. So I put the call in as urgent while trying to get anyone on the phone to actually talk to me. But then I hear a door open and someone in the background screams, "It's out! The chicken is free!" And the phone disconnected. Florida. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. The first call I took was from a blind elderly male. He called because he had found his son on the floor of the bathroom. The son wasn't responding, so I had the man tilt his head back and listen for breath. Nothing. He said he was warm and had talked with him less than 20 minutes prior, so I guided him through CPR. Compressions only because of the circumstances. He lived in a rural part of our county and we were low on rigs, so we did this for about 12 minutes before help arrived on the scene. EMS goes inside and immediately asks for PD. This isn't unusual. Sometimes loved ones can't or don't want to believe that it's too late, so we go through the motions until a trained eye is there. PD gets there and asks for a detective. This is also not unusual for younger deaths. 2 hours later, and still there, it piques my curiosity. I called the first officer that arrived and found out that the poor man had been doing CPR on his now mostly headless son. He had been taking a nap and his son had taken his own life with a shotgun. It woke him up, but not quick enough for it to register as a gunshot. When I asked him to tilt his head back, he did so by using his chin, which was still there. I think it worked out for the best because he had support there when he learned the truth. And it didn't make my job any tougher, but it definitely made for an unusual start to my dispatch career. I'm the son of the caller. My dad called 911 late one night to report hitting a 6-foot-tall chicken while driving and running off into a ditch. He had just crashed his car and his voice was a bit shaky on the phone, so the operator asked him to repeat himself a couple of times and then promised to send someone to help. The first cop on the scene got out of his car with a breathalyzer in hand. By the time he got to the back of my dad's car, he was laughing hysterically over his radio, telling people it wasn't a DUI. My dad had actually hit a 6-foot-tall chicken. And that's the story about the night my dad and all the local cops learned about emu farming. Consider me educated that for some reason people apparently keep emus in the United States. I can't imagine what for, but lesson learned. According to Wikipediad, emus belong to a ratite group and have high economic value for their meat, eggs, oil, skin, and feathers. The birds are adaptable to varied climatic conditions. Best memorable call I had was when I was still training. It was a few days into starting to take 911 calls on my own, and my trainer just listened in, and I got a very calm lady asking for paramedics. I asked her for the address and why she was calling. My son cut off his Johnson. I parroted what I'd heard back while mentally I was going, "Excuse me, what?" The lady confirms that her son cut off his eggplant with a knife and there was blood everywhere. Now, the whole room is bustling getting the resources I need for this guy with a knife who is probably bleeding out. I ask her where her son is in the house and where the knife is. When the lady can't really answer my questions, that's when I knew something was up. She has no idea where he is and she never saw him cut anything off. So I ask how she knew her son did this and she replies, "I have visions and revelations. I can see the knife." Oh boy. It becomes a back and forth figuring out who her son is and if anyone's even hurt. The lady even gave a neighbor's address instead of her own. Eventually we find her son's phone number through associations. The guy is actually just 2 years younger than her and a roommate.
So my supervisor hops on the phone and calls the guy and cuts to the chase.
Is this so-and-so? Did you cut off your Johnson?
Spoiler alert, his member was still attached to his body. This was almost 4 years ago, and I still bring it up to curious new trainees when they ask what their strangest case was. Otherwise, the few other calls I remember: a substance addict couple birthing their baby in a bathtub. Child Protection Services got involved real quick on that one. Double homicide. I talked to the teenage girl that managed to run out of the house after an adult roommate shot and killed mum and the teen's boyfriend. The teen thankfully wasn't hurt and ran to a neighbor's house. She vividly remembered every detail and was very calm until officers were with her. She was a stellar RP and was very mature. I'm very proud of her keeping herself collected after seeing everything that went down. I hope her life has turned for the better since then. Someone taking their life on the phone. My first one, an older guy called in from the house phone and very calmly started telling me the address, name, and his date of birth. He proceeded to say to tell his family he couldn't take it anymore and asked us to turn off his front porch light when we arrived. He also gave us next of kin info. I tried talking to him, but he didn't even acknowledge me. He had made up his mind. I heard a metallic bang immediately after he gave me the last bit of his instructions. First, I'd thought it was a metal chair or a step stool falling onto the tile floor. I kept an open line until officers were with him, confirming a self-inflicted gunshot wound through the left temple. The guy had a ton of health problems and just couldn't take it anymore. I can vividly remember the raspy and scratchy sounds I heard during the open line, which I believe were gasps, death rattles, and body twitches. He shot himself outside so his family didn't have to deal with cleanup. And of course, we had no other callers reporting shots fired in the area. My dad works in an emergency room, and one time he had to treat someone who had been attacked by an owl. The owl was unconscious on the side of the road, and she thought it was dead. Because she didn't want the children of the school bus to see the dead owl, she decided the best course of action would be to put the owl in the back of her car. Unfortunately, the owl wasn't dead. It woke up and attacked her. My redneck uncle had the same thing happen to him. He hit a deer with his truck and thought it was dead, then put it in the back of the truck. Free venison. The deer wakes up and freaks out. The truck was definitely not unscathed. That happened to my cousin with a squirrel. He thought it was dead until he picked it up. That had to be an embarrassing doctor visit. Okay, so my friend is a former 911 operator and she told me that she got this call from what sounded like an old man. He was telling her that it's been a while and she should come back over, like, "Hey, it's been so long, I miss you. Do you still remember the address? 123 Street, remember?" She assumed that he was just senile or something. Turns out he had someone in his house and he didn't want them to know he was calling 911. For clarification, she did dispatch someone just in case the old man was incapable of taking care of himself, because she thought he was senile and that's how they found out. I feel like as a 911 operator, if you hear cryptic messages like this, it'd be a dead giveaway that someone was attempting to relay the address to you. I hope if I'm ever in this situation, the 911 operator has half a brain and isn't like, "Huh? What?" My soon-to-be mother-in-law got a call that a guy and his roommate were doing substances, smack, and the caller's friend had OD'd. So this absolute mensa hooks up a couple of wires to the inside of a toaster, turns the toaster on, and attaches the wires to his unconscious friend's testes. Honestly, not sure if it actually electrocuted the unconscious guy, but the caller definitely seemed to think it would wake his friend up. My mother-in-law's response? "Sir, please don't do that again." Not me, but my cousin. She had this lady who would call often and make up stories, most likely due to loneliness. But they still had to send someone out every time, so one day when they got a call from her, they figured it would be another one of those calls. She said, 911, what's your emergency? Oh, there's a lion in my living room. There's a lion in your living room. What's it doing? She paused to ask us what it's doing. I don't know, just standing there. Can you send someone over? It turned out there was actually a lion cub in her living room that had escaped from the circus or something nearby. The worst part about that story is that you had to take the woman's calls more seriously in the future, and her just leaning over to ask what its intentions were are the cherry on the cake. We got a call from a woman having severe abdominal pains. Simple enough. We asked the normal questions. Are you feeling faint? Are you vomiting blood? Stuff like that. Then we asked if it was traumatic or not. Well, she eventually tells us that she had a tampon stuck inside of her for more than 20 days and she thinks that might be why she's hurting. Bonus story, I heard someone else's funny story. This guy and his wife were playing around with various vegetables and the guy gets a carrot lodged up his… You know where he got it lodged up. So they tried to remove it so that they wouldn't have to call 911. She used a pair of burger tongs and grabbed onto something and pulled, but she was actually pulling his intestines. Fun. If you get something stuck, just call 911. I've heard it all before. I don't care that you have a vegetable garden in your rectum, I just want to get you help.
Thank you for telling me that second story. I'm gonna go throw up now.
Nothing really jumps out to me as my strangest story. I can think of the worst, scariest, dumbest, and most infuriating though. Some of my good ones are people saying they've locked themselves inside their car, someone getting ripped off by a working girl, someone stealing the caller's things. By things, they mean a safe full of green herb. A mugger going around hitting people in the neck with a taser yelling, "Surprise, motherfricker!" in a deep voice and then taking their phones and wallets. So many 911 calls with people essentially calling and getting themselves arrested because they were in the wrong and not the person they'd called the police on. A guy going jogging along the beach and coming back to find his car gone, and while driving him home after taking a report, we drove by it. He'd forgotten where he parked. Trying to let a guy off who was obviously up to some shady stuff, telling him and his girlfriend to just go and rent a room and rethink their lives. They stole the cop's cell phone, he made a call for them because their phone was dead, and ended up having a crap ton of crystal in his car when they caught up to him later. And one guy who got into a fight with a bunch of ducks, started losing, tried jumping a fence, slipping and tearing his ball bag open on said fence. Thinking about it, I do have one. Her boyfriend was bleeding in the shower. I tried to get her to say where and how. She beats around the bush a bit and doesn't come right out. We got the paramedic to tell us afterwards. She's a nurse and they were fooling around. She had tried to catheterize him while he was hard and ended up puncturing something and they couldn't get the bleeding to stop. Managers, what secret tests do you put interviewees through without their knowing? I was a manager for Staples for a little bit and did some hiring of computer techs and computer salesmen or office supply people, copy and print people, as well as general cashiers. There was this one woman with 6 felony convictions that I had to interview for legal purposes. She wore ill-fitting clothes and looked like she'd just come from a war-torn area. Rumpled clothes, dirty face, messed up hair. Her resume was terrible as well. I'd asked her about the felony convictions and she told me that she used to do a lot of substances and got caught, also a few DUIs. She pulled a 1-year Narcotics Anonymous and 6-month Alcoholics Anonymous coins and said she just needed someone to give her a chance. She loves working with people and wanted to get her life back on track. I took her around the store and several people asked me where things were, and I saw her watching me. I'd straighten things on the shelf, smile at people, talk to kids, etc., and she started doing the same things after a few minutes. I needed a cashier soon, so I hired her. The next day she came in to do some computer training and she passed with flying colors. I stuck her on the register with another manager and she did great. After 2 months, I promoted her to my customer service lead and our overall customer satisfaction score rose by over 10 points because of this. Reviews came flying in, saying things like, "The extremely friendly cashier, great cashier, hilarious, love this store, best cashier ever, left my wallet with over $1,000 in it at the store, and the short, butch cashier chased me down to give it to me. Great lady, great store," and many more. You can't judge a book by its cover, or where it's been, I guess. Last I heard, she was in management training. I left the company for greener pastures about 6 to 8 months after that, and now I don't get to hire anyone, except interns or work and study recipients. I spoke to her on Facebook again and she said that she was turned down for more than a dozen jobs before I gave her a chance. Walmart, Warehouse Market, Office Depot, Food Pyramid, and little stores like that turned her down without interviewing her. She called every place and they said that her criminal record made it difficult for them to hire her to work with money. She's about to get her 2-year AA pin next week.
That's a great story. I wish every manager out there could read it.
My dad once rented a piece of property to a man with a felony conviction. I believe he'd killed someone while drunk driving. My dad said that he'd done his time and everyone deserves a second chance. It turned out that Rusty was the best tenant we'd ever had. He'd regularly do repair and maintenance work on our other properties in exchange for reduced rent. He did a great job, never complained, and when he did owe us rent, it was always on time. If every tenant would have been like Rusty, my dad probably wouldn't have sold everything out of frustration. There you go. Do your due diligence before hiring or allowing people into your lives, of course, but a second chance can be a great gift to give the world. It was a famous urban legend that Henry Ford would try this test on people. Once he decided to hire someone, he'd take them out for a nice dinner. If they put salt on their dinner before tasting it, he wouldn't hire them, or at least he'd think twice about it. My father also had an interesting trick. He worked in purchasing and he'd often meet with multiple vendors to get the best prices or rates or whatever. He'd take a cup and cut the bottom out of it, and then put that cup on top of a fake quote from vendor A, blocking the price. He'd then fill it with BBs and put a lid on it. Then, when vendor B came into his office, he would politely excuse himself and exit the office for one reason or another. If he came back and saw the vendor picking up BBs, he'd ask him to leave immediately. My boss has strange tests. She comes in late for interviews very often, but if she's actually on time and the interviewee is late, they don't get a job. I call this test the hypocrite. That's a real warning bell. Whenever management doesn't have a schedule that allows them to be on time for an interview, it tends to mean that you should be extremely cautious about taking a job there. Of course, one thing is if you arrive and the interview prior to yours carries on for longer than planned. Another thing is if you're on time and you have one interviewer falling sideways into a chair 10 minutes late and unprepared. Makes me do the desperation algebra to calculate how badly I'd need to take a job at that place. Agreed. I drove to a military site for an interview for a position with a contractor company. Close to an hour later of standing in the security area, not even a lobby, and I called the owner and he said he was on his way. In the background, I heard a baby crying. I ended up taking the job as layoffs were coming at my current job, and it ended up being the most disorganized, dysfunctional, irrational, unprofessional place I've ever worked in. Raise negotiations involved the owner claiming they were a non-profit before caving. Even the amount of vacation time I had would fluctuate 50% based off the owner's memory or BAC. Luckily, they were too lazy to actually track how many days off we took. If they bring a pen or pencil, they're cut above most of my applications. I brought a pen applying for jobs with me. Got a call the next day.
Fricking pen thieves.
I interviewed with a company recently who told me about their process for interviewing sales engineers. They would go about the normal interview, but that evening they would also go all out for drinks and try to pump the recruits full of alcohol. It was meant to be fun, but also a test of whether the person can know their limits and politely decline or hold their own after a lot of drinks. Apparently, drinking is a big part of sales. Getting the other person drunk while seeming to not try to get the other person drunk while not getting drunk yourself is extremely useful for getting a better price or a larger order or contract. I think at my first job out of school, they might have done something similar. We were out for lunch, presumably as a friendly thing, but also as a way to see how a person handles themselves in a mixed, casual, professional, social situation, common for this job. One of the senior guys starts telling a story about getting way too wasted and acting a fool. I think it was a test to see whether I would respond with my own ridiculous story of debauchery, or try to maintain professionalism. I didn't respond with any stories of my own, despite being a new college grad who only had those kind of stories. I used to do interviewing for a job that was basically hacking the internet. At some point in the interview, I'd ask them increasingly advanced questions until they came to something they didn't know. Then I'd explain it to them. If they thought the new thing was really cool, that was a big plus. It showed they were really interested in the job itself, not just the paycheck. When I was applying to work at a chemical plant, my future supervisor gave me a sheet with several short chemistry problems on it. The first two were normal derivation formulas, the rest were just asking for the names and properties of the compounds listed. I was sweating and getting more and more confused until he took the paper back from me, adding the answers. They were all jokes, things like a ring of 6 iron molecules, Ferris wheel. He just said, "This is a really dumb place to work, so you'll have to have a good sense of humor here." One of my favorite jobs ever. This thread is scaring the crap out of me. I'm desperately unemployed and I had 2 big interviews this week that I thought went well.
Did you do the secret handshake? And did you point out the tie with the equation on it and solve it? And did you notice the comics on the fridge? And did you make sure you used the salt at the right time? Less importantly, did you know anything about the subject matter? Seriously, some of these interviewers are making me lose my faith in humanity with how wildly dumb their crap is. So, you want to be a network programmer, huh? Well, grab that cord over there and show me how many sailor's knots you know. I used to think I didn't do very well in interviews. After I saw how interviewing processes usually go, I learned that I'm well above the average candidate. If you think you did well, you probably did do well, and if you don't get the job, they might have found someone who really knows their stuff. Half of these techniques don't prove anything. Most of these people are D-bags who think they're being clever.
It does seem that way, doesn't it? Who the frick cares if the applicant with 25 years of work experience and an impeccable track record puts extra salt on his fries? I'd always ask folks to use a particular subject line when sending in their resume for a particular job. Nothing crazy, just please send an email with programming position as the subject. It kind of floors me how few people could actually manage to do this. I noticed when they did.
I do the same on Craigslist. I put in a code word at the end of the ad to make sure people actually read the specifications and requirements. Usually, they don't.
I'm a supervisor and I've done interviews. I don't ask the typical BS questions. I keep it really relaxed, have a conversation, and just get to know the person while talking about the job. That way, I know what they're really like and not putting on an act for the interview. At the other end of the table, I enjoy these interviews the most. Whether I get the job or not, I at least feel like I put my best foot forward and haven't resorted to cheap cliches. I also feel like the person across from me is more intelligent than the regular trained HR monkeys.
Toby isn't a monkey.
Engineering manager here. I draw a right triangle, label two sides 3 and 4, and then ask them for the remaining side. Many engineers fail this or try to trigonometry it out. I do a lot of interviewing for B2B sales positions. The interview guide I'd been given to use is a couple of timed math questions. At first I thought it was pretty cruel to put two potentially stressful situations together, but it turns out you can learn a lot about someone outside of their skill with numbers. A candidate's response when presented with the math test is a good predictor of how they'd handle the unexpected challenge in front of a client. If a candidate gets a question wrong, I'll ask them what their approach was. Good for determining if they can communicate concepts clearly. And then maybe I'll explain the correct method to see how they'll handle coaching. But I didn't even take Psych 101, so maybe I'm reading way too much into it. Wow, that's horrifying. I can do math just fine, but you put it in the context of a high-pressure situation and my brain just turns off. For example, exams are easy, but standing up in front of a class of people and answering even a basic question and I can't even do 8 times 4. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I work in retail and I'm training to be a hiring manager. I was talking to coworkers about this very question earlier this week, and she told me her old boss's strategy. When a hopeful would show up for an interview, the manager would just do a brief introduction, then feign some distraction, apologize, and tell the interviewee to just walk around the sales floor and familiarize themselves while the manager resolves the issue. While the newbie walks around, the manager would have their sales floor's associates casually approach the interviewee as if they were a customer and have a brief conversation. The idea was just that they would end up shooting the crap about the job and their motives for applying. The person tends to be so wound up in preparing to talk to the boss that they often loosen up when they think they're in the confidence of an equal. Sometimes it's a person who gets along well and would make a really great addition to the team. On the other hand, one guy almost immediately admitted to another worker that he only wanted the job to support his growing substance habit. People lie, especially to the interviewer and especially when they need a job. This strategy allowed the manager to avoid a lot of potential liabilities and a lot of wasted interviewing time. Plus, these people would be working directly with the people doing the informal interview with them, not with the boss. It's important for the new guy to get along with the current crew. I also like that the manager put enough trust in his associates to allow them to be a part of the process. Sometimes a second set of eyes makes a difference. I've typically interviewed people for technical positions, which is a piece of cake. First, ask them technical questions about the job, and then ask them specific details about knowledge they claim to have on their resume. Where I work, padding your resume will get you tossed out rather quickly, but not after being lightly chided for putting stuff on your resume that you don't actually know. People with some work experience tend to pad their resume a bit too much. I remember one guy who listed BGP as one protocol he had experience with. I pressed him to explain it to me, and he caved, then admitted that BGP was used in a project he was involved in, but he had nothing to do with it and didn't understand it. That type of crap does not fly with me. If you put it on your resume, you'd better freaking know it, or I'm going to find out and embarrass you.
My dad owns a small IT business. He has a homework sheet of 10 or so basic technical questions he asks potential employees to fill out over email before they meet in person for the interview. The questions cover a variety of programs and problems, and it makes it rather easy for him to sort out those who actually know what they're talking about from those who add a lot of padding to their resume. It saved him a lot of time and has helped him find and build a great team of 3 employees who really know their crap and get the job done right.
Out of curiosity, what's to stop me from Googling the answers to the questions?
He knows this is something people can do, so he really reads into what they're saying. Is there a common theme of how the person looks at problems? And is there a pattern in their methods? If every question has a dramatically different approach to it, it's quite clear they didn't come up with the answers themselves. Like how teachers look at homework. He isn't looking for the answer, he's looking for their methods. Oh gosh, a company that actually reviews people's technical proficiencies rather than making them go through an arbitrary social test irrelevant to the job. Color me impressed. I used to work in a cafe. The work was simple. I asked the applicants to butter me 2 slices of bread and put a slice of cheese on it to make a sandwich. Those who failed to wash their hands first, failed. What was the pass rate? About 30%. I'm in the middle of interviewing senior software engineers right now. What sucks about XXX? Where XXX is the current language they're using. This was generally done in a fairly light-hearted manner after I asked them to briefly describe their background and they mentioned the main technology they're using. It's not a trick or anything, but it's the most important question I ask. What sucks about XXX? Not enough fisting videos. Am I hired? My dad would have a rubber chicken waiting in the interviewee's chair when they came into the room, and he'd watch them, deadpan, to see what they did with it. My apologies, I didn't realize the last applicant was still here. When I have a big stack of resumes, I randomly split them into 2 piles and just throw one of them in the trash. That way I never work with anyone who's unlucky. On a serious note, bring at least 1, preferably 2 copies of your resume. When I ask you why I should hire you, say something honest and tangible. Everyone is a fast learner. Everyone is also a team player apparently. These are the 2 most worthless comments you can make to me. I'm a retail manager. You could have a great application and resume and 100% on our computer application skills test, but if your email address is anything like love420forever@yahoo.com, your cell phone has a ringatone such as Usher, or you mention boyfriend or girlfriend problems in your interview, I won't be hiring you. At least get a non-substance or party-related resume or application email address. And if you get by and get hired, don't ask for cashier code 420. Seriously, what if my email address is my username and my ringtone is a meowing cat? Username is great. Ringtone, well, you'd probably sound too crafty and overqualified. Why would such a unique person stay in a position at $8.50 an hour and last there? It costs a lot to hire. I'd say the average hourly employee outside of the pharmacy has been there for 5 years and makes around $12.75 an hour. Some make more, been around since 1999, and of course the newer people. Every industry considers those overqualified. It makes sense, sadly. One of the most dangerous kinds of people in an engineering environment is those who won't admit that they don't know how to do something. For this reason, if a candidate couldn't admit at least once during the entire interview that they didn't know an answer, it would raise a huge red flag. With some candidates, I could ask them esoteric question after esoteric question that any reasonable person would see it's okay not to know, and they would hedge and dance around it, or try and guess the answer. My favorite was, what are the first 4 bytes of a file that identifies it as a Java class? There's some funny stuff in this grouping, but a lot of it is just about as useful as checking the potential employee's horoscope. This reminds me of a joke. 3 wannabe MI5 agents are being interviewed. 2 men and a woman. They're given firearms and told to go into a room and shoot whoever's in there. But they're not told that the weapons contain blanks. The first man goes in and sees his girlfriend sitting on a chair in the middle of the room. He immediately breaks down in tears and can't do it. The second man goes in and sees his wife on the chair. After 30 minutes, he pulls the trigger and emerges distraught. He's passed the test, but his wife hates him. The woman goes in and sees her husband on the chair. After 10 minutes, she comes out covered in blood. The interviewer says, "What the frick happened? That weapon was loaded with blanks." "I know," she says angrily. "I had to beat him to death with the chair." I like that the married interviewees are the ones who managed to pass the test. She was told to shoot whoever was in there, not kill him. I'm sure she didn't get the job. Well, she did go above and beyond what was asked, though. She's a go-getter. My boss does the walking test. He does walking interviews and will change his pace to see if people would keep up with him with the change of pace. It's a big thing in hotels. What? Who's going to separate from the person they're interviewing with? Oh crap, I'm suddenly 15 meters in front of the interviewer. I knew I'd screw this up. I'm an editor who sometimes has to hire other editors. The interview is usually just a formality for me. The resume and cover letter tell me almost everything I need to know. Mistakes on the resume? No way you're getting a call.
Disorganized or confusing layout? No thanks, I need people whose main goal is to communicate clearly. Applicants move up in the pool if their style choices, such as using the Oxford comma, match my company's, because I figure it will be easier for them to conform to our style guidelines. I'll also look for writing samples on the web. I would assume that for a lot of these personality test type situations, the interviewer is choosing from a pool of people who've already been filtered through their CVs. The interview is a chance to test their critical thinking skills among a few other things. I'm an engineering manager. One of the first things I do for drafting types is have them do a model for something I sketch up. I leave something important off, such as a thread size, part thickness, or maybe hole location, just to see how long it takes them to ask for clarification. People try to be self-reliant to prove themselves, so it makes a lot of people squirm once they figure out they don't have all the information. A good candidate not only finds the missing information quickly, but communicates the issue and seeks out the answer. 4 out of 5 assume an answer, which kills me when I ask the question, do you think your print is ready for manufacturing? Sometimes it really is true that a candidate who has all the answers is someone who never asks the right questions.
If you don't push your chair in at Cracker Barrel after the interview, 9 times out of 10 they won't hire you. Manners matter.
I ask a question of medium difficulty that any competent person would be sure to get right. I then ask them if they're sure about their answer, implying that it's wrong. Tells you a lot about how they react to feedback and how they communicate with a client or boss when they think they're wrong. IT manager here. I always try to make the person perform a task or write code that will directly relate to the actual job. For example, if you're a front-end HTML jockey, you get a screenshot and an hour to build the page in HTML with Notepad. The special part of the test is that there's no way you can finish it in an hour, so it's as much a question of prioritization as it is technical ability. One guy wasted the whole hour trying to make the rollovers work. No offer. The guys who got offers were the ones who got a basic page running, then went back and went after the frills. My old manager kept a stack of comic books, a lot of old-school superheroes and some of the Star Wars graphic novels, on a mini-fridge behind his desk. He'd always offer the interviewee a bottle of water from the fridge, but in order to get it, he'd have to slightly shift the comic books. If they mentioned the nerdiness or coolness of him having them or asked him about them, then they would be much more likely to get hired. Caleb was a pretty cool guy.
So, only people who like comics get hired? I'm pretty much a nerd, but I don't read comics.
No, it was more that you had to not be embarrassed by the fact that there was a grown man behind the desk who happened to not like comic books. I don't like them either, but happened to like video games, Lord of the Rings, etc., and could keep up. He just liked people to be able to approach those kinds of awkward conversation topics. What was the stupidest reason you got woken up for? When I was a teenager, my much younger brother woke me up from a nap saying,
"Mom said don't wake up."
Another job well done.
Did you ever get the, "Guys, be quiet, Mom said to let him sleep longer," right outside your door?
This is why wars happen.
You mean why 8-year-olds are tossed across ponds and skipped like rocks?
Obnoxiously loud buzz and shriek of a National Weather Service warning to my cell phone at 3 a.m. telling me that in about an hour, it was going to be raining in a county 60 miles away. I figured out how to turn off that crap permanently. False positives generated by humans are unacceptable. One time, I got a tornado warning in November. I live near LA.
Did you die?
My daughter always wakes up in the middle of the night, but it's not a quiet wake-up. She's 6. She screams at the top of her lungs, "Dad!" "What?" "I can't sleep." "Me neither."
Anytime I fall asleep at my mom's place, my 8-year-old sister will shake me awake and ask what I'm doing.
You guys really know how to sell the whole having kids thing, don't you? My brother looked at his clock, saw a :30, and assumed there was a 7 in front of the colon on Christmas morning. It was 3:30 in the morning. Even on Christmas, that's 4 hours too early.
One Christmas, I tried to get my family up at 1 a.m. Technically, it was the morning.
I remember doing something like this when I was a kid. I saw 12:30 and freaked out thinking it was already noon, totally oblivious to the fact that there was one of those in the middle of the night as well. My parents were pretty teed off. When we were both pretty young, my sister woke up at 4 a.m. on Christmas Day once. I had to force her to go back to bed. From then on, we instituted a "it's not Christmas until 7 a.m. rule in our house. I feel like everyone with siblings has been the victim or perpetrator of this particular problem. Now we await the karma of our kids doing it to us with a sense of dread.
A bazillion years ago, when I was 16, I was hospitalized for infectious mono, and they would wake me up to ask if I needed a sleeping pill.
They would wake you up? You mean they did this regularly?
In my memory, they were doing it every time I fell asleep. Probably it was just at night. Maybe just one specific mean, kid-hating nurse. I don't know. It was a very traumatic experience.
When I was in the hospital before, they had to wake me every couple of hours for different medicines. Later, it was just to see how I was, like a certain quick test or ask me a question. It made it so I couldn't sleep. The wake-ups were very quick though, like 20 seconds. At the very end of some, she would ask if I wanted a sleeping pill as she knew I was tired of being woken up all the time and not sleeping well. I'm not doubting your story, I'm just wondering if I wasn't the type to instantly be alert when I wake up, if I'd be thinking they were waking me up to ask me if I wanted a sleeping pill. I was in hospital for a week last year. They were giving me Valium at night to help me sleep, but they would give me that at 10 and my IV bag would be changed at midnight. One nurse was the chattiest frickin' B-word in the ward. Comes in and all the lights are off, with me clearly asleep.
"Oh, hello, how are you? Blah 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 blah."
She was terrible. And then they would wake everyone up at 6 because that's when daily cleaning, changing sheets, wiping things down, mopping floors, would happen. Plus I'd get my daily blood work taken at the time and an anticoagulant shot in the hip. Didn't need it, it was regular practice to give them to everyone. God, they really just don't like letting people sleep in the hospital. My grandma calling to ask me if I wanted blueberry muffins at 1 a.m. Of course I do!
Were they delicious?
Frick, yes. What time are you going to wake up today? Well, I guess right now o'clock.
My husband does this regularly. That or, what time do you want me to get you up? Ugh, butthead. He's so lucky I love him.
Some butthole at university pulling the fire alarm in the dorm building during finals this week. Did they ever find out who did it? Not that I ever heard. My guess is someone got drunk and thought it would be funny. The thing is, at my university, when someone pulls one fire alarm, all the dormitories get evacuated.
Normally, someone drunk just put a pizza in the oven and passed out.
In my halls of residence, any 3 a.m. fire alarm was usually a cheese toastie in distress. I was in the party res, and this happened multiple times at my university too. Once I'd gotten pretty drunk that night and had just gone to sleep, 4 a.m., when 10 minutes later the alarm went off. Despite being the loudest, most annoying alarm I've ever heard, it took me at least a solid minute and a half in my drunken, half-asleep stupor state to figure out it was the fire alarm. I just wondered why my head was suddenly so loud. Staying in dorms wasn't even an option. There was something like a $500 fine if they found anyone who didn't evacuate. I kid you not with this story. So my linear algebra professor decided to test us to see if we were truly learning the material in class. So he said, "Your cell numbers are in the school system, so I'm going to call each and every one of you at a random time during the quarter. I'm going to ask linear algebra questions and you have to answer it, or else you lose 5 points." I thought it was weird, but we decided to go along with it. 3/4 of the way through the quarter, I completely forgot about it, and at like 3 in the morning, my phone goes off. I wake up and I answered it. "Hey, it's your math professor here. Here's your question. How many vectors does it take to form a basis in R4? And what are the conditions needed to form it?" I paused for a second and just said, "No, I'm not doing this," and hung up. The next day I talked to him after class and he said, "If you truly knew the material, you'd know it in your sleep." I lost 5 points, but I didn't care. That was the dumbest thing to do to wake a person up.
I don't know my own name when I wake up from a deep sleep, much less linear frickin' algebra.
You should have called him every half hour from 2 a.m. through a Saturday night to ask him to tell you about something from the class.
I would have gone to the head of the department over this. This is beyond inappropriate. I know that sounds harsh, but this was a power trip, and it was an abuse of his power.
My dad called me and woke me up the other day to ask me if I wanted to go for breakfast. My instinctive response was, "Frick you, I'll kill you." I called him back 10 minutes later when my alarm went off and we had IHOP. Being woken up to be told I'm going out. I would have gathered that by waking up and noticing that you weren't home. I would assume, oh, she went out.
This happens to me all the time. I get woken up by someone yelling, "Bye, Alexandra, I'm going to the dentist or mall or work." Like, thanks, if only I could have figured that out all by myself. Sorry, I'm bitter about this.
They do mean well. They don't want us to worry. But yeah, we'd rather sleep longer and worry a bit than not sleep and not worry. Is leaving a note an impossibility? A friend of mine showed up at my apartment at 9 a.m. because he was in the neighborhood and had to take a crap. Well, would you rather he left it on your doorstep with a note?
"Dear friend, fix your doorbell. This is what you are sleeping in past 9. A lazy piece of crap. If any of my buddies pulled this on me, I'd totally understand.
Coworker called me at 1:30 a.m. to call out for the following day. Coworker, not employee, and because of a sore throat.
That crap happened to me too. Hey, I'm gonna be out tomorrow. Can you tell the boss? Can't you call her in the morning? No, I'm gonna be busy. It's literally just, hey, I won't be there. Okay, have a good day.
Seriously, or send a text, that makes the most sense. I got a lot of places say that's a no-no, but I can't imagine calling that early in the morning is any better. Or if you work in hospitality, you send the text and they ask you to come in anyway, cold or no cold, COVID or whatever. I really don't miss it. My dad, I think he'd been smoking green herb, but anywho, he woke me at 3 a.m. in my senior year of high school to see if I wanted to drive him to Walmart so that he could buy tan mini blinds for the dining room. He handed me a piece of paper that he had supposedly written down the measurements of the windows on, but it was just the wrapper from a piece of candy. Measurements. List of candy. You think he had been toking? You have some pretty high standards of evidence. Well, my dad can be pretty eccentric, and around that time he'd had surgery, but I just don't think the pills they gave him were that good. In case they were that good, do you know what the pills were called? No reason. My mum woke me at 7 a.m. on Sunday when I was 15 to tell me that Princess Diana had died. I was annoyed, so I just said, good, and went back to sleep. I was 18, and my mum woke me up at 7 a.m. to tell me that too. I asked if Dodie was with her and apparently nodded in approval when this was confirmed and rolled over. I've just heard that Princess Diana and her lover were killed this morning. Mum, I swear it wasn't me. I've been here all morning. I have an alibi. Back in 2007, my dad woke me to tell me Jessica Simpson was getting a divorce. I have no idea why. I've never expressed even the slightest interest in Jessica Simpson. I barely knew who she was. I have no idea how he knew who she was, and yet he felt the need to inform me about the demise of her marriage at 7 in the morning. It was surreal.
Your dad was just really happy that his fantasy was finally coming true. When my dad would wake me at 7 on the weekend to ask me when I planned on getting up.
That was probably just his way of saying get up. Oh my gosh, what is up with parents in this? My dad would tell me that I'm wasting the morning. What the frick? All my family does in the morning is watch TV and yell at each other. I'd rather be asleep. My friend calls me.
Hey Jerry, can I borrow Smash Bros. Melee? I'd be grateful, man.
Dude, it's 3:30 in the morning. Fricking wait until the sun is out. Jerry took my words seriously.
Hey, the sun is out. Can I get the game now?
Sure.
Sorry everyone, tournament is delayed until sunrise because someone is being a jerk.
Well, mate, you should have your own copy of the game if you're going to host a tournament, Steve.
Get stuffed, Jerry.
You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. My girlfriend punched me in the face. According to her, she just woke up from a dream, but was still in one of those weird half-conscious, half-dreaming states where she didn't really know where she was or what was going on. She said she looked beside her in bed and saw some dark mass laying there that made her uncomfortable. So after watching it for a moment, she attacked it. Ended up decking me square in the nose. Hard. Somehow, I instantly knew what had happened. I shot up and yelled, "Babe, what the frick?" She mumbled some sort of half-asleep apology, immediately rolled over and went back to sleep. I, on the other hand, lay there unable to go back to sleep for 2 more hours, because it's not exactly easy to do when you're woken up like that. I was furious. It's one of my favorite stories about her and us now, though.
Well, at least now you know she can handle it if any strange dark mass of a person is in your home unwanted.
My dad's, "Wake up, we won $1 million! April Fool's prank 2 years in a row. He really thought he was clever." I can't remember if I was actually woken up or woke up on my own, but I woke up one morning to my ex mad at me because she had a dream that I cheated on her. My dad left for work with soup boiling on the stove. I woke up smelling smoke and I thought someone was smoking. The window was open. I went into the kitchen and freaked out. Being woken up to ask me if I wanted to smoke a bowl.
No, bro. The reason I fell asleep in the first place was because I'm too high.
I woke up punching myself in the face repeatedly. I must have tried to itch my nose or something and did it. Then I hit myself again trying to block whatever was hitting me. I must have hit myself in the face 10 times before I woke up enough to realize what was happening. My whole arm fell asleep and it was dark. Roundhouse kick to the face from my 2-year-old son. Did you repay the favor the following night? With twice the fury. Roundhouse kick 2. Twice the fury. A couple of nights ago, my husband flipped the light on in the middle of the night because he was looking for spiders hanging from the ceiling while he was dreaming. Twice. 2 hours apart. Thinking about it, it parallels with the time he was sleep-talking, stood up in the middle of the bed and then rolled me over to look under me for the map that he was dreaming was missing. I speak Spanish, but the rest of my family doesn't. One Saturday morning, my dad was having a garage sale and woke me up at 7 a.m. to translate for some guy who didn't speak English and wanted to negotiate prices. So I dragged myself out of bed. I'd had a really late night the night before and was a little hungover and went to talk to this guy about a punching bag. I was talking with him for about 5 minutes before I realized he was speaking Portuguese and that I was having a one-sided conversation with myself and neither of us could actually understand the other. In conclusion, Dad woke me up to translate for Spanish speaker at a garage sale. The guy was speaking Portuguese. My roommate and her boyfriend snuck in at 6 a.m. and tried to quietly do the deed while I was sleeping in the other bed 2 feet away. Wow, F that guy. If he's cool with that.
Just gonna note, no one said anyone had a problem with it, just that it was a stupid reason to wake up.
I woke myself up because I was laughing. I was dreaming about flatulent jokes. I got woken up by my own laughing once too. I remember I was camping and I was dreaming about exploding outhouses and for some reason it got me in my giggle bone. It still makes me chuckle a bit.
Family members have woken themselves up snoring loudly. My parents' dog tooted itself awake a few times.
And the narrator has also woken himself up with his own toots and snores on a large number of occasions, so let's go easy on the dog shaming. A tiny earthquake, and then when I was about to fall back asleep, my brother came into the room freaking out.
I woke up from a minor earthquake once. We don't really get earthquakes here, so I assumed it was a dream until I saw it on the news the next day.
My mum very excitedly woke up to show me a recently dead bird that she had seen fly into our window. I told her that she wasn't a cat, and behavior such as this was unacceptable. During college, some drunk idiot tried and failed to cook grilled cheese at 2:30 in the morning, set off the fire alarm for an 8th-floor dorm. The campus police officer who showed up to help clear the scene stood on top of his cruiser and yelled, "Who the frick burns grilled cheese at 2 a.m.?
My mom wants me to be awake. She doesn't have anything to do, she just doesn't want me sleeping if the sun is out.
Most fun thing for teenagers happen around midnight. Wake her up then so she doesn't miss out on that. I got this crap when I was living at home during the summer between years of college and working afternoon and evening shifts in retail. I'd wake up at about 11:30 a.m., shower, eat, go to work, come home, have dinner, and then stay up until 2 because that's when all of my friends were online. My parents really did not like me sleeping so late. Their reasoning was that I needed to be up at the same time as the rest of the world. I guess it's somehow disrespectful to sleep late if no one else is, but what the heck would I be doing in the morning if I don't work until 1 p.m.? I finally just said it was unreasonable to expect me to be up at 7 a.m. when my schedule was the way it was, and that if my shift changed, I would change my schedule. But yeah, there was like a week every summer of, "Stop sleeping so late, other people are already up." Yes, it's exactly like that, except not always related to work schedule. Still, my mom doesn't want me to sleep the day away, and she doesn't like me being awake while everyone else sleeps. It's not as if I'm loud or doing anything dangerous. My manager once called me at 6 a.m. to ask if I saw his email he sent about an hour before about shirt sizes for the new uniforms. My boss does that. In the call, he's always slightly disparaging that I didn't email confirm I got his email. I'm always like, "You sent it, I got it. There wasn't a question. When there is something to respond to, I'll do it when I get to them." Now I just click reply on his emails and peg out "OK" on the keyboard and hit send. I woke my sister up for moral support when I went to battle with giant-ass spiders downstairs. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that spiders are an acceptable reason to wake someone up. My roommate, who I love so much, put an old potato in the microwave for 5 minutes. We don't know if it's because she didn't poke it with holes, or if it's because it was old, or if 5 minutes is too long for a raw potato, but we had a food flare-up. I wake up because the fire alarm is going off and I peek my head out and there's a small fire in the microwave. I blasted it with water from a spray bottle until it stopped glowing, and we threw out the melted plate and blew the smoke out of the windows, and we laughed about it for like an hour. It was such a stupid situation. Who lights a fire in a microwave? Who messes up baking a potato? Who's baking potatoes after midnight anyway? Why was it so funny to hold a melted plate in the middle of the night? It's actually one of my favorite college memories so far. My significant other waking me up in a panic because there was a parrot giving birth on the floor. He was talking in his sleep, by the way. Someone waking me up to tell the person next to me the time.
My friends stopped by to ask me if I was asleep.
It's actually really annoying when someone shakes you and wakes you up and then looks you in the eye and asks if you're awake.
It's even more annoying when they ask, "Were you asleep?"
Yes, it's like someone seeing you struggle to carry a heavy load and asking you, "Is it heavy?" I was having a nap one day. I very rarely nap, and a friend of mine who lives halfway across town charges into my room and screams,
"Do you have a phone book?"
I was so dazed and confused that I didn't even consider asking why and just gave him the book. Years later, at his wedding, I gave him a phone book of my new town. I will never forget the nap that got away.
I have questions. 1. Why, if he lives halfway across town, did he charge into your room? 2. Why did he need a phone book? 3. People still use phone books?
I'm a pretty heavy sleeper, especially after a night of drinking. One Saturday morning when I was in college, I slept through a fire alarm. I woke up when a security officer entered my room and started yelling at me.
"Hey, why are you still here? Didn't you hear the alarm?"
I was still in my bed at that point, and I just looked at him and said, "I didn't hear it, I was sleeping." He then tells me that the fire alarm was set off in my room and started rattling off questions. "Were you smoking, microwaving, toasting, lighting incense?" I told him, "No, dude, I just told you I was sleeping, you literally woke me up." At this point, I could tell he was getting a bit frustrated, but so was I. He then tells me, "Get up, you need to go outside with the others." I responded, "Well, can I at least get dressed? I'm not wearing boxers." After that, he finally left, and I put on some underwear and my robe and went outside. It turned out my smoke alarm was defective, which is why it set off the system and why I couldn't hear it as loudly as everyone else. It wasn't necessarily a stupid reason to wake me up, but at the time I was super annoyed because it sucked to wake up to a security guard yelling at you early in the morning. My girlfriend woke me up to tell me the toilet was clogged and asked if I could help. Walked to the bathroom, watched her use the plunger to unclog the toilet, and walked back into bed as she said thank you for the help. Long-serving EMT. Been woken up on a shift at Lord knows what hours for. Toe pain for 4 weeks. Gangbanger with the flu. The patient who wanted to ask if she could take aspirin, picked the same guy up for the 4th time in 24 hours for no reason, people who had nightmares. The list is endless. All young, otherwise healthy people with nothing emergent or immediate happening to them. It's my job. I was on shift, so I shouldn't really care. But when you work 24, 36, and 48-hour shifts, those 10-minute naps are a blessing. 1 hour's a full night's sleep, and anything over that a miracle. Human resources. What's the pettiest, what the hell, complaint that you've had to deal with? I was doing temp work at a heating, AC, and plumbing company, answering the phones and stuff, but there was this one girl that just hated me. I guess I was too happy to be employed? Anyway, I go in one day and the owner pulls me into the office. I have to get a substance test done because I'm too energetic and I blow my nose frequently. I'm a morning person and I have allergies. The results come back negative, the owner apologizes, and I quit on the spot. That's right, Toby Flendersons of the world, we're reading your stories today. I for one cannot wait to see the depths of petty crappiness displayed by bored, unsatisfied office workers.
He doesn't say good morning to me. My boyfriend's boss pulled that on him the other day. Why don't you say hello and ask me how I am? It was like, really?
My gosh, I've got a similar complaint in the military once. I was in Iraq, stationed on a base where we, the army, worked with the Marines. I was guarding one of our top secret facilities and had been on duty an hour or two. Suddenly this random Marine came up to me, irate. "You're so rude," he said to me. "I've passed by you at least 3 times and you haven't said hello to me once." At the time, I was flabbergasted by this complete stranger being mad at me for not doing something I in no way considered part of my job. I didn't know how to respond. I wish I'd had the wits to point out that I was a soldier on guard duty, not a frickin' hostess at Applebee's. I don't know if it was a cultural thing, maybe he was from the South, or a gender thing because I'm a female and therefore expected to be sweet or something, But I just couldn't understand why a fellow service member would expect someone on duty to be issuing friendly greetings at passers-by. I mean, I've done the hostess thing, and I'm pretty good at being friendly when it's appropriate, but when my orders are use deadly force if necessary to protect this room, and to not make our customers feel at home, I just don't expect people to complain about me not saying hello every time they walk past me. This was 12 years ago. I'm still mad. Now, some of you have written to me to point out that in Marine culture, the greeting of the day is actually a real thing. I honestly never realized that. I just told this story to my husband, who was also in the army and did 2 tours in Iraq. His first reaction to my story was, what the frick was that guy's problem? But after I mentioned the greeting of the day that y'all told me about, he said, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Like me, he never experienced that after basic training. He was in a very different kind of unit than I was too. So I think this was just an Army or Marines culture clash thing. I'm grateful to those who kindly informed me of this. Okay, this is weird, but I have to say that I did experience one manager who I legitimately made this complaint about. He would walk in every morning and go straight to the girls working in the handwork area and be super friendly. Bring them coffee, lots of cheerful greetings, then walk to my station. I'd say good morning and he'd grunt and walk on by. Never a friendly word to me, but constant friendliness to the girls. I was fully competent in my job, by the way, still am. After a few months of this, I was called into a meeting with his boss for a regular interview, and he asked me why I wasn't seeming happy with the manager. I told him. Next day, the manager comes to me and we had a long talk in his office, during which he told me he realized, only after being asked about it by his boss, that he was totally treating me like crap every morning. He apologized, stopped fraternizing with the girls, and has treated me fine ever since. So sometimes, rarely, this is a bit of a big deal. I'd say the issue you experienced wasn't just so-and-so doesn't say hello to me. It was so-and-so treats me notably different and worse than my colleagues performing an identical job function, and the difference in treatment appears to be based on gender. The former is a BS complaint. The latter is quite significant. This was about 10 years ago. A guy in accounts pretended his wife had died. He faked her funeral, took compassionate leave, quite a lot of extra leave, as his wife was Indian and he claimed he had to go to India to sort out her estate. He was given £500 from an office collection. Unfortunately, he hadn't let his wife in on the scam, and she had phoned the office looking for him one afternoon. I believe the complaint that came in from his supervisor was, "You know X's wife has died? Well, I just had a phone call from the afterlife." He was fired on the spot, sued for his extra leave, and is the reason we ask grieving workers for death certificates before we allow any extra paid time off. Oh no, sorry, I meant my other wife. I mean, saying your grandmother died is one thing, but what was his plan? You can only fake your wife's death for so long. Oh, we had a guy like that. Never could prove that this stuff didn't happen, but apparently his wife, girlfriend, it changed from day to day, his 18-year-old son and his dad all had a stroke in the same month. Then his mum died, then he leaves one morning saying his dad is back in hospital. He shows back to work around 1 saying, "Yeah, I just had to pull the plug on my dad. Not an easy thing to do," but seemed totally unfazed otherwise. We were able to prove that he was going out to his car several times a day to drink, but I feel like having 3 family members all have strokes, and 2 of them not being of stroke-having age, and then having both of your parents die all within 2 months is a little suspicious, especially when you can just casually pull the plug on your dad. Also, we weren't able to find any records of obituaries or death certificates anywhere. And the funeral home he said they were having the funerals at didn't list anyone that could be his parents as having funerals, the 2 dates he took off work. So either he was a bald-faced liar, or he was the most unlucky man in the world for a short period. I'm as amazed by the gall of these particular people as I am disgusted by the behavior, to be honest. I used to help my HR team in organizing a summer event for families. Nothing special, just a grill party for employees with some extra events for children. This was a large company of around 300 employees. A week before the event, one guy raised ape crap hell because we chose a date when his daughter was on summer camp. You should have told him that was exactly why you chose the date. Summer camp sounds more fun anyways, honestly. Some people are so entitled. One woman in the US sued a school because her daughter had something else she wanted to do on prom night. So unbelievably, they sued the school to change the prom night. Because frick everyone else, the only thing that matters or has a life is me and my family. My company has had some serious what the frick moments. Take down the pictures of World War II airplanes because our German customers might take offense. Had a phantom crapper who wrote "F you" on the wall in feces and laid one in a newly installed toilet. It wasn't even plumbed in yet, they just crapped in a waterless toilet and left it for someone else to sort out. We had a guy who got caught sleeping at work for the 3rd time. When the shift leader gave him a talking to, the guy complained to HR that he was being victimized. During the subsequent investigation, it was found via CCTV that the worker was going to his car and doing smack. This was confirmed in a positive substance test. These are just some of the ones that jump out at me. Not what you would expect in a multi-billion-dollar aerospace engineering company. A letter of complaint. The doctor called me fat. I looked up the patient weight. Patient was unambiguously fat. BMI of 50+. The doctor was giving results of positive tests for non-alcohol-related fatty liver disease and corresponding dietary advice. Wrote the patient a non-apology letter, gently hinting that choice of words was not ideal, but perhaps some of the doctor's advice was good. Dear patient, the doctor misspoke. He meant to say morbidly obese. The doctor misspoke. He meant to say, there she blows. Man the harpoons. I'm picturing Dr. House apologizing this way. My mum, who works for the state, had to deal with an employee who was catching pigeons at work property and then taking them home to barbecue them. I have a huge list. A manager who complained that a guy's accent was too thick. After speaking with the manager, who frequently uses politically incorrect slang, and the heavily accented gentleman, I can honestly say the manager was the issue and that guy didn't even have a very thick accent. A guy kissing his girlfriend hello after finishing work. This was reported as a homophobic act. A guy who kept asking people if they were on break at the same time, as he likes to pray with them. Frequently. A woman calling herself the B-word and another employee reporting her for insulting an employee. Yes, the actual complaint stated that she called herself the B-word. A girl complaining that another guy was stalking her every night. She would ask a guy to escort her to her car. It was the same guy. That one was weird. She actually used his parking space at his house to save money since he lived close to work. She then later complained that he stopped letting her do this. I can only assume due to the stalking complaint. A manager reporting every single one of his employees in his branch for coming in late. Turned out he'd told them to come to work an hour early, unpaid, but they came in 15 to 30 minutes early instead, unpaid, so he tried to write them all up. A male customer called his boyfriend so gay. When the employee told him not to be homophobic, he replied they're gay and lovers. She then asked for them to kiss to prove it. That one had a ton of people in stitches over how this woman literally lives a Futurama skit life. Might not be Futurama, but I swear I've seen a show where two people pretend to be gay and do a super awkward kiss. What size of company do you have to run for these things to happen with this frequency? Or is real life actually like The Office TV show? Also, I think the cartoon that last person was thinking of was Family Guy. One of my favorites from the other half who is in HR. So Mr. Blue and Miss Pink work together for some time. At some point, their inter-office flirting becomes too much for Miss Pink, and she goes to HR. Apparently, Mr. Blue has been sending her texts and making overtures that the married Miss Pink does not want and needs to stop. Mr. Blue is pulled into HR and they go over his behavior. He's going to be suspended while they determine if he'll be terminated. It's correctly pointed out that this is very inappropriate behavior. He seems to understand, but something is off with him. Then he asks, "Is she saying she didn't want me to do this?" "Yes," comes the answer. "This isn't something that coworkers do. You're single and don't understand the full scope of what's going on." Hold on a sec. Mr. Blue pulls out his phone and shows a text of Miss Pink with her, undressed, spread eagle along with a steamy nose. Then another and another. "I'll send them to you for your research." HR regroups, ends the meeting and does more investigation. Turns out they'd been doing the deed for months. The husband was getting suspicious and she needed an out. They both got disciplined by HR, though her marriage fell apart and she had to carry the knowledge with her that most of HR had seen her naughty bits. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. The most what the heck complaint I've seen is finger guns being banned in a workplace. Someone complained that they felt threatened by someone making finger guns in the air and filed a complaint. And I guess since that was creating a hostile work environment for that employee, they had to send a memo that it was unacceptable behavior.
I guess it's all how you imagine it. Most people make them all friendly and nice, but maybe you're alone in the office and Mike, who's made it clear he really doesn't like you, walks in, stands in front of you, glowers and stares you in the eye, slowly raises his double-barreled finger gun, levels it at your face, pulls the imaginary trigger, turns away, and quietly goes about his business without ever saying a thing. Is that HR worthy?
In my humble opinion, I think you need to wink if you do the finger guns, otherwise it is hostile.
Not HR, but a friend who owned his own company told me about having to fire a guy for picking up a working girl in the marked company vehicle.
It amazes me that people seem to forget they're representing the company when driving a company car. Whenever I drive one, I'm the most cautious, courteous driver on the road. Always following speed limits, letting people merge when they want, not cutting people off, no phone while driving, but I feel like I'm constantly seeing others in a company car that are some of the most aggressive and horrible drivers doing the exact opposite of me. It's just kind of like, why would I ever want to buy something from your company when you act like that? They don't work for Bang Bus then. I know the people in HR pretty well. My work used to let people dress up for Halloween each year. Company is about 350 people in size. People used to have a blast. There would be parties and contests for costumes and pumpkin carving, etc. I would guess about 65 to 70% of the building would get really into it every year. One lady complained to HR that some of the costumes were upsetting to her because they were satanic. We're talking vampires here, folks. Fricking Dracula. Like the classic teeth, black cape, white skin template vampire we all know. That was the end of Halloween for the entire building. I hate that B-word. I would distribute pentagram necklaces and encourage people to join me in worshipping the Dark One, just to get her back for that nonsense. If someone can show me where vampires appear in the Bible and personally attack the various protagonists, maybe I'd say they have a fringe case, but even then, who cares? Silly, bored Bible Karens. The new recruitment manager was sending inappropriate and very explicit text messages to female job seekers. You know what? He didn't last very long. He didn't last long in what sense? In my office, there was a huge deal of who kept finishing the pot of coffee without starting a new one. Let me tell you, some office workers had to go 4 or 5 minutes without coffee, which caused chaos.
I'm thinking it was you.
I've done a lot of bad things in my life, but I would never leave a coffee pot empty. Did you do those bad things because some F-word left the coffee pot empty? Chewing too loud, typing too loud, had to go home because it's cold, hottest month on record and the AC in the server room next room over is dying, and they can hear him. Direct quote. Apparently, he was laughing from across the building, not loudly, and they were not okay with it. I once lightly tossed the keys to a fellow employee. It's something I often do, but this particular employee didn't like me. Later on, I was asked by my manager why I threw the keys at my coworker. Apparently, my coworker told them that I got angry and huffed and chucked the keys at his chest. I was utterly flabbergasted that I was considered to be the one in the wrong. When asked the standard, "What should you do next time to make sure this didn't happen again?" I didn't know what to answer. I considered answering that maybe my coworker shouldn't be such a wussy B-word. Luckily, my team leader stepped in and told me the right answer was not to toss the keys next time. After the meeting, I busted up laughing. It became something of a running joke with my other coworkers whenever we tossed the keys to each other.
Next time, make a point by slowly placing the keys on the floor and backing away slowly. You might get another complaint, but that would be funny.
We had an issue with scented things in our office. Some people had a sensitivity and there was little airflow, so if someone sprayed something, they had issues. But that's not the bad part. It ended up being a feud between two sections that had to be mediated by HR. On the sensitive side, there was a supervisor who looked for reasons to write up those who might be wearing something scented. She tried to write up someone for wearing a scented deodorant and someone else for carrying scented lotion in their purse.
That person hadn't even opened it, by the way. It didn't help that the sensitive one liked to claim a migraine and go home if she even suspected someone was wearing a scent. They ended up stopping the whole issue by setting a trap and monitoring the scent of some new lotion. They all talked about how good it smelled. Strangely, the sensitive one got a migraine and the entire group was called into the office to be written up because even the supervisor could smell the non-existent lotion in her office.
When called out on it, HR had to come in and put a stop to the whole issue. I understand that people have sensitivity to smells. I'm one of them. Old lady perfume makes me have an asthma attack, and the beginning of it was reasonable. People followed the rules. But this turned into a witch hunt on one side with someone taking advantage of it. At one point, the supervisor demanded to search people's purses and bags to make sure they weren't bringing in scented items. Didn't even have to be using them. HR did have to tell her that it was illegal, though. It's funny how tribal people can become in the workplace over a prolonged period of time. Boredom and perceived injustices can combine to mutate into some truly absurd fights. HR worker here. There's always the standard stuff. I got gypped on paid time off, overtime, and hours. Some of my other things are an employee stealing a work truck and driving to a gambling town, pawning work tools in said truck, gambling all the money away, getting drunk, crashing said work truck, falling asleep at the wheel, and found by the cops in the morning. He then complained that none of it was specifically forbidden in the handbook. We offered him Cobra because it was cheaper than proving in a hearing that his actions fell under gross incompetence. One lady cashed her check twice by mobile deposit, then taking it to a check cashing place. Once the company asked if we could make the 401k waiting period 10 years. Another guy took a loan against his 401k for custom motorcycle parts. That's not a complaint, it's just wow. I had a guy complain that we took too much for child support. He had 6 orders, a different lady each. That mother fricker was fertile. A pregnant EE who sat right by the break room every day and complained about the lady microwaving salmon for lunch. Every fricking day. Spoiler, it was me who complained. Had a voicemail from a former employee complaining that he was fired for bullcrap reasons. I saved that voicemail for a long time. But the one that takes the cake. A flirty married jerk at work winking at ladies, but he's connected so he gets a small talking to. The behavior stops. That's good, right? The receptionist doesn't show up to work. Then we get a call from the receptionist's husband. Turns out she was sleeping with that flirty jerk and doing crystal at work. It shouldn't have caused such a huge ruckus, but the flirty jerk is married to the owner's sister, plus Crystal. She's in rehab and the flirty jerk has to tell his wife that it happened in their own bed. That spongy mofo wouldn't even spring for a cheap motel. I'm in HR. I've had a few what the heck complaints. Employee complained about other people's perfume affecting her allergies but wore heavy perfume herself. She said everything outside her home gave her allergies. With a doctor's note, she was allowed to work from home, but was more than happy to come to company events and get wasted. Yeah, that makes total sense. We also had an employee who was abrasive, rude, arrogant, and actively tried to get people fired, and he was a little too flirtatious with women as well. There were several complaints about the guy. The what the heck part of it was no matter how much documentation we collected about him, the executives refused to discipline him because he'd been at the company for 20 or more years, and had a unique wealth of knowledge that would be extremely hard to replace. We also had an executive who scared her department so much that people were afraid to use the bathroom. If some people took maybe a minute too long in the bathroom, the supervisors grilled the person about where they were and sometimes penalized them for that. The supervisors were under so much pressure from the exec, it took a long time because people were too afraid, but finally, some people came forward to us about the issue, and we put a stop to it immediately. HR is an interesting world, but it can be very stressful and at times lonely. Where I work, we have mandatory inappropriate behavior prevention training. The person who teaches it told us that they had, in the recent past, received some complaints about people holding the door open for them. The lady felt she was getting harassed because of it. They mentioned they didn't do anything about it except try to explain to the lady that the person was more than likely just being nice. I was threatened with a write-up for that once. The lady was walking down the hall with a container of documents in her arms. I was next to the door and held it. She even thanked me. A couple of days later, I was brought into the HR office with my manager and told my conduct was perceived as sexist. They had a write-up for me and I decided not to get pushed around. I told them I was being polite to someone with an armload of stuff, and unless the person who complained is going to do my job for them when I quit, they'd better tear that up. My manager and the HR rep had a talk, and the write-up was misplaced, never to be seen again. I don't know if that lady I held the door for was the one who complained. Probably someone else who wanted to stir the pot in the office. Talking to an employee about underperformance and she complains because I wasn't telling her how great she is after every text she sent. One of our biggest customers is a large electronics manufacturing company in France and the UK. We regularly get visits from them for meetings about something or other. At one such meeting, one of the visitors told us about Steve. Steve was always vanishing during lunch break and nobody knew where he went, until he was discovered in the toilets one day. Another toilet user noticed a foot twitching beneath the cubicle door and called out, receiving no answer, so they tried the door and obviously it was locked. Fearing the worst, he went for help. The first aider came back with him and called, no answer, so he entered the adjacent cubicle, stood on the bog, and looked over the partition wall. Steve was whacking away like his life depended on it. He received a warning for that. A few weeks later it happened again, only this time it was a female first aider who got a free show. A month later it happened a third time, only this time Steve didn't plug his earphones into his smartphone properly, and so was broadcasting the guttural sounds of a hardcore adult flick throughout the toilet. This was Steve's third and final warning, and he was fired. He claimed unfair dismissal on the grounds that nowhere in the employee handbook does it say that what he was doing was forbidden on company grounds, and it was during his own time and not during work time, and he ended up getting his job back. What is the most chaotic good act that you've ever witnessed? My former employer had a metered parking lot. The lot was heavily monitored and they'd ticket you like the minute your crap expired. It was decidedly not good for business. People want to be able to linger in a coffee shop, you know? Besides, there was no reason for that lot to be metered anyhow. It was barely even adjacent to anything but our shop. Well, the meter just started breaking. All the time. It would get fixed by the city, but then a few days later, it'd be smashed or jammed or whatever. We asked if people would be towed, and the city was like, no meter, no ticket. One night I stayed a bit late to clean a freezer. When I left, I spotted my boss breaking the freshly fixed meter. She was like, "Yep, guess I'm a criminal, huh?" I once counseled one of my students in my homeroom to quit school, get a GED, and enroll in an apprenticeship program. Had I been caught, I would have been fired, since policy was to try and motivate all students to graduate. The kid was failing all of his classes, which were 9th grade courses, but he was smart, working a full-time job, and was already 18 years old and had a crappy home life. Honestly, that's the smartest path for a determined and hardworking kid who doesn't thrive in academia. Good for you. He probably makes good money and has a stable job now. I hope so. He didn't take the advice right away. As long as he was enrolled as a full-time student, his family kept getting a payout from funds due to his father's earlier death. He only came to school because his mum needed that payout to help raise his younger siblings. He planned to keep it up until he aged out of the funding thing in a few years, and then he could finally quit coming to school, get a GED, change jobs to something 9 to 5 finally. So he and I made a sort of pact of, if I don't harass you about your schoolwork, will you at least pretend that I do try to get you to do your schoolwork so that the principal doesn't figure out that I let you sleep in my class? I'll let you sleep all you need because I know you work late and you care about your little siblings. Meanwhile, here are practice materials for the GED. Do them when you can so you don't forget anything. As soon as you can do it, go and take that test. This confused a few classmates since they knew I wouldn't allow them to sleep in class even though I allowed him to do so without penalty. This was back in the late 1950s when my granddad was just a teenager, 14 to 15 years old, and he lived in a rural area in Arizona. This relatively new family in town was arousing suspicion because the wife and kids were always banged up. My grandpa's stepfather spoke to the man of the house and told him that people could see what he was doing to his family and he needed to stop. When he didn't stop, my grandpa's stepdad excused himself for dinner one night and left the house for the evening. The following day on the way to school, my granddad was on the bus and drove across a field where Family Man McGee was tied to one of the posts, beat to holy heck. My granddad, the bus driver, and the oldest student helped untie the guy and got him onto the bus so that he could get back home. No one talked about it, but apparently my grandpa's stepdad and a couple of other local guys caught up to the guy and beat the crap out of him so that he'd know how his defenseless family had it. Seeing he excused himself paints such a good picture of him politely dabbing the corners of his mouth with his napkin and slowly pushing back from the table, just to go and grab this dude and whip his butt. Haha, dope. This is indeed a satisfying story, one that we should probably try and replace with getting the cops and CPS involved in the modern day and age, though. When I used to walk home from class at night, there's this guy that would always call me gangster, major respect, but never anything else. For the reference, I'm a 19-year-old short Hawaiian girl and not very threatening looking. We'll call this guy JD. He'd ask how my day was, if I'm getting home okay, if I had any problems getting home. I began to look forward to it when I was walking home from class. A couple of times I'd be having a bad day, and this guy, who was outside, rain or shine, would always say hi to me. One day I was walking back, and he was talking to a buddy. Said buddy looked over at me and whistled, to which JD whacked him on the shoulder and said angrily, "Show some respect," and smiled at me and said, "Hope you have a good night, gangster. I hope he's doing all right." That video of the guy picking up litter thrown out of his car before physically throwing the passenger out. Threw into a park, turned on his hazard lights, waved the vehicle behind to alert them, and finally picked up and throwing out the trash. I don't care if it's staged or real, it was a delight to watch. A friend of mine had a roommate that stole a painting that was given to my friend. The roommate claimed that it was his and refused to return it, so I broke into their house at 2 in the morning and stole the painting back. I didn't tell anyone and kept it at my house until the roommate moved out. My friend and his painting are now reunited. The kid who stole it was a real piece of work. He would do this kind of stuff to everyone. Multiple people that I know have had this complaint about him, and he also brags about stealing stuff from people. The painting was given to my friend as a present while he lived with the roommate for the first time. They both moved out at different times but chose to live together in a new house. During the moving process, the roommate took the painting and hid it from my friend for weeks. Then at the new place, he revealed the painting to my friend and explained that he wouldn't be giving it back. I caught wind of this story and decided to take matters into my own hands. The city of Sao Paulo never cleaned its tunnels, so they got black from all the cars' fumes over the years. This guy cleaned skull drawings in the soot using a rag and some water. The city sent officials to try and stop him, but hey, he was cleaning, no vandalism there. Eventually they sent someone with a hose to clean this guy's vandalism for good, only to discover how dirty the walls truly were.
That reminds me of the one where people spray-painted wangs on potholes in the road to force the city to fix them faster.
Something similar is happening in Cologne in Germany. They have these incredibly dirty walls, so some people took it upon themselves to do art with pressured sand. The city is against it, so they cleaned the parts of the walls where there is art. It's called reverse graffiti. If the city catches you, they fine you, since it's treated like real graffiti. There was a guy in my historical town of 800 people named Casey. Casey was the town police. We didn't have an actual police force, just the sheriffs from the county an hour away. So Casey was the law. He rode around on his bike, beating up people who did things like break into cars or harass people. Now, Casey himself wasn't exactly an upstanding citizen. He moved around a lot and dabbled in crystal, he grew huge green herb plants in the anise fields behind town, and was generally the kind of guy who looked shady. Except everyone in town knew Casey and everyone trusted him completely. If someone had a problem with the admittedly large population of crystal heads in town, they'd go find Casey and he'd bash heads in and shame people until they either left or towed the line. Imagine an incredibly white trash paladin with a series of crippling vices and a children's bicycle, and you have Casey. Casey also made wax out of green herb in his spare time. This is unsurprising because Casey can make literally anything. Anyway, I'm out of town one day and Casey comes knocking on my door looking to share his new bounty. When I don't answer the door, he decides to leave me some. A normal person would have put the wax on some waxed paper or in a container and then left it on my porch. Not Casey. Casey smeared a very generous amount of green herb wax all over my metal doorknob. Being Casey, he forgets to leave a note to tell me he did this. I came home late that night and put my hand on the doorknob and ended up screaming at my lungs because it was unexpectedly sticky. It was good wax though. About the Great British Bake Off hosts. When contestants do cry, out of frustration or disappointment generally, Mel and Sue stand near them and use unairable language so the embarrassing footage is tainted and won't make it into the final edit. And strangely enough, I've heard that the unairable language is predominantly brand names rather than cursing. Imagining Mel and Sue having an entire conversation completely in brand names, simultaneously ruining footage and making the upset contestant laugh. Two older British women standing next to a man crying over a souffle just chanting the C word over and over. I love this image and I will think of it whenever I'm feeling low. Thank you, imaginary versions of Mel and Sue. When I was in high school, I was an extremely troubled teen. Legal trouble, substance usage, violence, mental illness, failing every class, the whole gamut. When I was in 11th grade, I was put into a special education program for people like me. And I did wonderfully. I adored my teachers and vice versa. One teacher in particular was amazing. She helped me set goals, get on track. She even helped me find my first real job. My senior year, I was doing really well in my classes, but this school was set up like a college in that you needed a set amount of credits to graduate, and I was woefully short. I still needed something like 22 or 24 credits, completely impossible to make up in my last year. Even though I was doing well, there was no chance I was going to graduate. So my lovely teacher started digging through my record. She somehow converted my community service, treatment stays, lockup time, and all the consequences for my behavior into credits. She turned institutionalization into fricking elective credits. By the end of my senior year, I had 1/2 credit to make up in summer school. I was able to walk with my class for graduation in June and received my high school diploma in August. To this day, I have no idea how she did it, but she absolutely changed my life. Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. A Brazilian substance trafficker has been praised on social media as the modern-day Robin Hood after he kidnapped 2 nurses, stole vaccines and syringes, and ordered the medical staff to inoculate residents in one of the poorest areas in the country's southeast. Thomas Vieira Gomes has made headlines in the local press for acts of charity over the past year, even as authorities have issued successive warrants for his arrest. His most recent gesture of generosity to combat yellow fever, which has swept poverty-stricken areas of Brazil, has seen him lauded primarily as a hero rather than a villain. The substance gang leader, known on the street as 2N, held hostage 2 nurses from a vaccination center before transporting them and their equipment to one of the poorest favelas in Rio de Janeiro. The Latin American television station Telesur reported that Gomez's gang oversaw the nurses as they administered vaccinations over a 2-hour period in the Salgueiro favela. Once they'd finished administering the injections, they were returned to their workplace. In a report on the incident, the health workers said their kidnappers had treated them well and without any aggression. They said they'd complied with the hostage takers because many Salgueiro residents hadn't been given access to immunization centers. Despite the illegality of Gomez and his gang's actions, officials have praised the hostage-taking. Carlos Mink, a state deputy and a former minister of the environment, wrote on Twitter that the immunizations had been done as an act of public service. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I once caused traffic to come to a standstill on a 5-lane highway because a dog was running around and narrowly avoiding being hit several times. I pulled my car to the shoulder and jumped out to try and get the dog off the highway. Seeing this, several people got out of their cars to help. After about 10 minutes of us trying to chase this dog off the highway, the owner comes and the dog jumps right into her car. Everyone else gets in their car and leaves while I'm talking to the very relieved owner who couldn't believe all of these people got out to try and save her dog. Once she gets in her car and leaves, I realize I'm on the opposite side of a 5-lane highway from my car and no one is stopping to let me pass. Finally, a trucker must have noticed my predicament and starts cutting off traffic and slows down so that I could walk to get to my car. Another trucker follows suit and I'm able to get back to my car and back on the road. It wasn't until later that I realized how dangerous what I had done had been, but it was worth it to see the owner reunited with her dog. In conclusion, rallied an army of motorists to try and save a runaway dog. I was at a psychedelic rock concert in New York City that involved quite a bit of light moshing and crowd surfing. A really fun show overall. If you've never crowd surfed before, there's 2 main ways that it's usually done. Either you get up on the stage and jump off hoping that the crowd will catch you, or you ask a couple of strong-looking people around you to just lift you up. But at this concert, there was a third way. There was a big intimidating-looking guy in the middle of the mosh pit who apparently spent the entire concert down on all fours, getting people to jump off his back and start crowd surfing. He especially tried to wave in people who seemed nervous to try it. Overall, he must have gotten at least 50 people to crowd surf who had never tried it before. It was really a magical sight to behold. A guy at the local Dunkin' Donuts has to throw out donuts after someone tried to sue them for donating poisoned donuts or whatever. He gladly throws them out and then walks back inside. Whatever happens to them isn't any of his business, since it's trash anyway. He says he stopped trying to catch the mysterious garbage thief after 30 seconds of trying because he isn't paid enough to care. At the Dunkin' Donuts my brother worked at, a homeless guy would politely stand next to the dumpster. The employee would place the bag of expired donuts in the dumpster and close the lid, then homeless guy would open the dumpster and take them out. It was on video and the manager required that the rules be followed. It was very lawful neutral. I think this would really be lawful good. The employees obey the rules and the homeless man would wait until protocol had been followed and everyone benefited. In case anyone is wondering, yes, the narrator chose the topic that made him think about Dungeons & Dragons the most. What can I say? I'm obsessed. My grandma was a kindergarten teacher for 50 years. Yes, you heard that correctly. She retired at the mandatory age of 72. It was a small community, mostly economically okay, but some poverty. Every few years, grandma would develop a case of the clumsy. She'd trip while watering plants, and wouldn't you know it, but she'd spill a bit of water on the child that was unwashed and wore the same clothes for weeks. Nothing for it but to make up for the mistake by giving him a bath and clean clothes. Then return the clothes she messed up after she had cleaned them. A case of clumsy would last the whole school year, and oddly enough, she'd tripped near the same child every time. The case of clumsy often meant that she miscounted her grandchildren every morning and made an extra lunch.
You there, would you mind taking this lunch so it doesn't go to waste?
There was this Thai infomercial about a lady who owns a marketplace, and she went to visit the people who rented her place and just started getting angry and wreaking havoc, breaking weighing scales, etc. She was filmed by the buyers and the video went viral and all these negative comments. Turns out the sellers she was angry with were playing tricks with the customers, like using rigged weighing scales, starting with 1 kilo. Wanksy would spray paint wangs around potholes so the government would fix them.
Some people plant trees in potholes for the same reason.
Be the change you want to see in the world. This one actually happened yesterday at work. A girl and her mum came in and got a few sandwiches, but the girl wanted a brownie. They were paying cash, but were like $3 short for the brownie. The girl didn't throw a fit or anything, but was pretty sad. I was just gonna let them take it, it's just a brownie, but before I can say anything, the guy behind them says, "I would like all but 5 of your brownies." Mind you, this is like 40 fricking brownies, which costs like $110 of just brownies. He proceeded to give the girl all of the brownies, and she needed 3 bags just to carry all of them. The girl was ecstatic, and everyone else was laughing their butts off. We'll never forget you, brownie man. I've never seen it personally, but I rather like Richard Ancrom's guerrilla public service. There was a sign on the freeway in Los Angeles area that was providing confusing directions, so he fabricated an overlay to Caltrans standards and installed it himself without any sort of government permission. Caltrans eventually found out, inspected it, and allowed it to stay.
I like that eventually turned out to be almost a decade.
My parents stole my neighbor's dog and rehomed it because they were mistreating it.
My parents did this with a cat. The neighbor was throwing rocks at the cat because he didn't want the cat in the house. My dad confronted him and said, "F you, this is our cat now," and took the cat home. Our old tenants had a 14-year-old, declawed, flea-infested, super sweet kitty. She was so tiny, and when we kicked them out, he was going to just release the cat into the wild. So my dad said, "Go F yourself," and we took her in. She infested all of our other pets with fleas, but it was worth it. She got to live until 17 with us. So, you know how you'll have childhood friends, and eventually they go their separate ways, but you still stay in touch. My brother had a friend who got into crystal and had this little 8-pound, 8-month-old puppy. He would get high, blow smoke in the puppy's face, treat him badly, etc. One day he told a third friend from the group, "Man, I can't take care of this thing anymore. I'm just gonna dump him on the side of the road." So the second friend basically goes, "No, F that," and steals the dog the night before. A week goes by and he's being fostered at the good guy dog thief's house. He then asks my brother, "Hey man, your brother want a dog?" I have a 9-pound wiener dog, who at the time could use a friend since I worked 9 hours a day and my wiener could be all alone. So of course I said, "Yeah, let's go visit this guy." I show up and unlock the back gate and am immediately met at eye level with 3 Great Danes. And running around in the bushes is this comically small, long-haired mutt. We go inside and I sit on the couch and the pup runs right up to me, gets in my lap, rolls over for a belly rub. It's like the guy never grew up in a crystal house. Needless to say, my wiener has a friend now. There's a group that does guerrilla ramp building to help with those mobility issues around the city. They've stepped up in so many of the areas that the city and businesses have been ineffective in maintaining code in, or outright illegally ignored it, to the detriment of citizens. I freaking love them and I donate to them whenever I can. The next is the guys who spray paint wangs all over potholes so the city has to come out and fix them. If I see them doing this in real life one day, I'm stopping traffic to A, help, B, kiss them, because thank you. When I was still in my medical training in LA, I often saw a middle-aged gentleman putting coins into expired meters. The one time I saw a meter maid try to approach him and he ran off giggling. A few months later I saw him at a stop sign in a Maserati, basically the definition of chaotic good. This is a bizarre pseudo-crime with an illustrious history actually, as one commenter lays out. Paying meters for random strangers ahead of the meter enforcement personnel was part of a strange court case in my state recently. Basically, these college kids would walk around town just ahead of parking enforcement personnel, who were trying to issue tickets and feed the expired meters so no tickets could be written. This cost the city tens of thousands of dollars in tickets, so the city went after the kids for harassment. Lo and behold, after the city spent nearly $80,000 in legal expenses,
The kids won because they were paying the meters and there's no law against that. I worked in daycare, and over the summer the kids had to bring their own lunch. One extremely undernourished and developmentally behind toddler only got things like chocolate frosting between slices of white bread for lunch. I started packing extra of my own lunch, with healthy stuff like yogurt and fresh vegetables, and sat her on my lap each lunchtime and coaxed her to eat it. It was totally against the rules and probably illegal, but the lead teacher and I couldn't just sit there and watch her literally eat frosting for lunch, so I got permission to take over myself. We just kept it quiet. I teach English as a foreign language to high schoolers. I have one class where the class clown is always trying to be disruptive, but his method is to shout encouragement whenever someone answers a question, like, "You a genius," or "You so intelligent." I have to act annoyed, because I know he'll stop doing it if he ever knew how much I fricking love it. Friend's mother found out her husband, my friend's father, was part of a group that made inappropriate content featuring children when the police showed up to arrest him. He had realized that they were about to get him, so was trying to escape the country via the local airport. He had told her his mother was sick and he was going to visit. She not only told the police where he was, but raced them to him, slide-tackled him at the airport before he disappeared, and was in the process of beating him to a pulp when the police arrived and pulled her off him. When my ex was arrested in front of our house for a similar offense, I said something along the lines of, "I want to kick his ass." The cop turned to me and with a very serious look on his face said, "Go ahead, we don't mind." That video where a guy paid for everyone's food if they were behind him just because two girls cut in front of him. I think it was at In-N-Out. The video's been reposted many times on any social media. Once in grade school, one of the kids was torturing another kid who was on the spectrum. He was running behind him and hitting him with a stick. They both ran right by me and I instinctively stuck my leg out and tripped the bully. He got bloody hands and knees for hitting the concrete. I got detention and a note sent home to my parents. I didn't care. I would have done it again. My parents took me out for ice cream, they were so proud of me. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.